All right, everybody, good evening. Tonight's going to be our regular Planning and Zoning Commission. It is our regular meeting. Today is July 25th, 2024. Official time now, we're going to call it 6:15. We are at the City Council chambers. Item one that we're going to look at is called the call to order. So at first, can I get item A roll call?
Andrew Mikowski,
Here.
Anita Favela,
Here.
Michael Brown,
Present.
Socorro Martinez,
Present.
Kevin Gual.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, item two is going to be public comment. Right now, it appears we do not have anybody signed up for such. If you have not filled out a document and you do choose to speak as a public comment, you can do so, and just please get a comment and provide it to our secretary when you get a chance. Public comment is going to be Planning Zoning Commission is welcoming comments from the public. Those wishing to speak must sign prior to the staff meeting, or as I directed a second ago. Speakers may speak on any topic, whether it on the agenda or not. The Planning Zoning Commission cannot act upon, discuss issues raised by any of the decisions at this time. Speakers under the citizens' comments shall observe a 3-minute time limit. Inquiries regarding matters not listed on the agenda may be referred to staff for research or possible future actions by the board. At this time, do I have anybody wishing to make a public comment? Okay, ma'am. No public comment noted. We'll move right into regular session. Item A. Consent agenda would be, these matters are going to be appear to previous agendas, require a little debrulation, gosh, or considered routine tasks. If discussion is desired, items may be removed from and for separate considerations. We only have one item on that, and it's just simply going to be to approve the minutes from May 23rd, 2024 from the regular meeting. Do I have any discussion from the board at this time on those minutes? Nothing, Kevin?
No.
Okay. But this time I'd like to take a motion to go ahead and approve the minutes from the May 23rd, 2024 regular meeting. Can I get one of those motions, please?
Motion we approve.
All right, a second, please.
Motion approved.
Okay. Okay, all in favor of approving? Okay, it is a unanimous approval for the minutes, ma'am. Or you'll receive those momentarily. Item B, the items for individual consideration. We're going to go into our, nothing at that point, so we're going to roll into item C, which is our public hearings, which I'm sure everybody's here for tonight. The first one we're going to discuss is PZ Case 24-10, consent to a public hearing and consider proposed zoning change from the MF, which is a multifamily district, to PD, planned development, for approximately 10.2722 acres for Block 1, Lot 2, R's and Romeo 1 of the Vaquero Coker Addition, located at 3100 Joplin Road, City of Kennedale, Tarrant County, Texas. At this time, I'm going to open it up for any kind of public comment or discussion on this particular case only. We're looking at 6:17. Do open that at this time. Does anybody would like to make a comment on that?
Sir, I have the forms turned in for them to sign on that one.
Take care of it, ma'am. Thank you.
Are you ready for the first person? Mr. Jonathan Sheffron.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So just read myself. I'm Jonathan Sheffron. I live at 500 Steeplechase Trail. I'm the head of the HOA next to the apartments. And we are here just to kind of share some concerns. We are not for this change from MF to PD for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons is because you don't want to move from a non-conforming MF to a non-conforming PD. So just kind of draw your attention to UDC 9.2, which says that the proposed location of uses and structures such as parking areas, which all along our fence line of our homeowners is the parking areas, those should not be located near the perimeter of a PD, which it would of course be a perimeter of the PD if it changed to that. And we've had lots of discussions with Alta and the city for the last couple of years since this has all been going on. It's been very tiring for us. A bunch of our homeowners feel like they have not been getting honest answers in this whole process. And so I just want to encourage you guys to, all we're looking for you to do is just follow the code, which is if you follow the code, you can't be for changing this to a PD.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Tracy Hardy?
Hello, my name is Tracy Hardy, and I live at 1406 Fern Court. I am opposed to the zone changing from multifamily to the PD development for the following reasons. Some of the requirements for multifamily that were not followed had an impact on me as a neighbor. Some of those things were privacy, trash in our yard, and flooding issues. We began having problems with this 2 years ago. One, privacy, multifamily zone allows for 2 stories, not 3 as they are today. Because they are 3 stories and much higher, I can see into the 2nd story and 3rd story windows. If I can see into them, I'm sure they probably can see me. And we have had people from the apartments looking through the fence and making comments when we're in the backyard. I am asking for more trees to be put in on their side and taller fence to try to help with the problem. My trees help quite a bit as they continue to grow in the summertime, but when fall comes, the leaves all fall off and you can see everything. Trees and the fence, I believe, would help in this situation. Fence can go as high as 8 feet, minimum 6 feet. Trash in our yards continually. Prior to the apartments, we did not have trash in our yards. Since they put the trash dumpsters behind me, there's always trash in our yards, and trash pickup from the city is very noisy. We were informed that recently they have gone to valet trash pickup, which it helps some, but we still getting trash every week. I am asking that the trash dumpsters be moved from one location to another. Third, flooding. Flooding has gotten better. We had a problem with flooding. Flooding has gotten better since there's been changes, but we still have a problem in my yard in 2 spots. In conclusion, the things that I'm asking for can be fixed under multifamily zoning and do not require a change to PD zoning to fix the issues, and the city hold them accountable since some of these issues were caused by not following the multifamily zoning guideline. Multifamily allows for a minimum of 6 feet, but they can go as high as 8 feet, and I believe that will help with seeing through the windows. And there is not a maximum on the tree amount that they can put in. There's a minimum, but not a maximum. So if they put in more trees, I believe that will help out too. Flooding and trash would be a concern for all zoning. I am opposed to changing zoning from multifamily to PD zone. If it's in compliance in multifamily, it'll just still be in compliance in PD zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. John Havale?
John Hibale for 18 Cocoa Valley Drive, Kennedale, Texas. So I guess what proposals we're giving is all here. It's no use of me going through that again. My question is, what's the written guarantee that it will be fulfilled? That's all my question is. I mean, we can go through this, I mean, the PD, MF to PD. What is the guarantee? Or is the PNC going to back what we are requesting to get done? Yes or no? And if it is not done, what's the penalty? So that's where my line, it's worthless for me to go through all this. I mean, it's going to be reiterated a number of times. So we need a guarantee in writing, certified by the city of Kennedale, certified by P&Z, that says, okay, it will get done. Do we have that at this point? So this question, if somebody can answer when you all are doing your discussion, that would be a good question to ask. Is there a process that you have in place right now with what our demands are to get it certified or whatever? So if it doesn't happen, who do we hold accountable? The P&Z or the city? So I'd like that during your discussion to point that out, because I think it's important for us to understand that. And my next question, fast question is, can I give my minutes to somebody else?
No, sir, that's not allowed.
Okay, fine. Then, in that case, so the 3-story was already a violation when the first contract came in. So you're not going to knock out the 3rd story and have 2 left. That ain't going to happen. So that's out of question right there. But privacy protection, yes. And that is very important. I mean, everybody thrives by privacy. And if they can see us, we can see them. If I put my binoculars, which I have a couple of them, I'm sure everybody else has the binoculars, and we look at each other, that's what we have tried to avoid. And the houses that are being built today are very close to each other. So all that I'm asking is, in your discussions, when you all discuss in front of us, give us that possibility of a guarantee that if it's done, you will certify it. If it's not done, then what is the penalty? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Be careful.
Mr. Eric Elam?
My name is Eric Elam. I live at 349 Kennedale Sublet. I'm against this PD's change for one major reason. I live next door to Hammock Creek Apartments, and it falls under the HUD program. And because of that, their property is valued at only $7 million, and it's a $30 million property. So us as a whole homeowners are picking up the tab basically for HUD of about $23 million taxpayers, and we're supposed to be getting all this taxation. Alto Apartments was blowing the horn, the owners, that there were $58 million in taxation and all this. Then we did some research and found out they challenged it and got it knocked down 5 million, down to like 52 million, something like that. And then this year they challenged again and they got it down to 48 million. So now us taxpayers are picking up that tab, and it's their right to protest, I get it. But don't say you're gonna be paying taxes on 58 million, you're paying it on 47 million, because it's beating us against the wall. With that said, I worked for apartment industry for multiple years. I know the management company that they have, they're HUD related, big time. What's the excuse? Why PD? HUD will not allow a company to come into the HUD program if it's not in compliance with city codes and violations. It can't come in. I think that's that's the smoking gun. I think that's what's going on. I'm not knowing that's it, but why do they need to change? Because everything they want to do now, as was stated earlier by earlier people, that can be done under MF. That can be done. They've got that zoning, they're there. But to get PD, it brings it into compliance. And under the city code 9.1, I believe it was, the city code says you cannot bring a property into PD. This is our city ordinance. I don't even know why y'all are voting on this. You shouldn't even pass it, be honest with you, because it says in that ordinance in 9.1 that if you cannot do it to circumvent a violation in other zoning, And that's what they are. They're in violation of MF zoning. So they're trying to get PD to bring it into compliance. And they've stated that, and that's illegal in our city code. So if y'all try to pass that, that's going to get overturned no matter what because it violates the city code. They need to go before the BOA and get adjustments is what needs. That's the proper way to do it. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Eric.
Mr. Jason Husfield?
Jason Husfeld, 1411 Derby Drive. I too oppose the PD change. Basically echoing some of the same sentiments that he just said. Basically what got us here today is a city allowing a builder to pretty much do what they want. They didn't follow most of any of the guidelines at all, and they've continued to this point. My neighbor cuts down a tree. He has to follow all of your guidelines to cut a tree down. Yet they pretty much get to do what they want. Maybe get a slap on the wrist, maybe not. So bottom line is if the city would have held them accountable to what they were supposed to do to begin with, we wouldn't even be here today. We're not completely opposed to having buildings and stuff here. We just want it done the right way. So at the end of the day, like you said, clearly 9.1 states a PD shall not be sought primarily to avoid standards and requirements of those zoning districts. Time and time again, it's been proven that the only reason for this zoning change is due to multifamily being non-conforming. The city even states that in their review. The rezone to a planned development would assist in addressing zoning nonconformities that exist at this location. So per 9.1, I mean, you can't recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Miss Christina Husfield?
Christina Husfeld, 1411 Derby Drive. I'd like to start off with saying that when I refer to the city, I'm referring to the staff that work for the city, specifically Daryl Hull and Nathan Gonzalez, just to be clear, not mayor, city council, or board members. Our neighborhood has been working with the developer over the past few months to try and fix some issues. Our experience with the developers has been very pleasant and we've made good progress. Due to our lack of faith in the city, our neighborhood has requested that these items be completed prior to the PD. Our neighborhood was encroached upon and our privacy and quality of life was violated. We feel confident that the developers will be willing to complete these items prior to PD approval so that our neighborhood can go back to some normalcy. We've explained that due to the history with us in the city, our neighbors don't feel that the city will hold the developers accountable to the PD after the fact. Lack of accountability is why we are here today. At this time, we have faith in our mayor, our city council, and our board members, and do feel that we have their support. Unfortunately, it's the city who has to hold the developers accountable. Yet, they have yet to hold them accountable up to this point, so why would anything change with this PD? We currently have 18.7% of surrounding land petitioning, and we'll be getting a few more signatures once our neighbors get back into town. Nathan asked one of my neighbors yesterday if I had gone house to get petitions or if we had a meeting, since all the petitions were dated the same date. He also said that he would be calling every person with a petition to see where they're at with following this. Nathan has not reached out to our neighbors since long before the initial PD request, yet now he's going to reach out to the neighbors that petitioned to see where they are at with all this. Does the petition not tell you where they're at, or is this a way to intimidate our neighborhood? If the city or state law requires the city to call all individuals that signed the petition to verify it was them, fine, call them. I've got nothing to hide. I did not commit fraud. None of my neighbors did. But if the city is calling all of those against the PD to question them why they're against the PD, that doesn't seem legal. I have yet to find anywhere in the city or state code that requires us to explain ourselves to the city. I would like to ask the city why. Why do we have to give the city a reason as to why we're against the PD, although most of us have stated why? Why is the city spending more time investigating the citizens than they are spending doing their job and holding developers accountable? Why does it appear that the city is pushing for this zoning despite that it goes against the UDC? We expect the city and the leadership to uphold the laws and the codes that have been put into place. Therefore, Daryl and Nathan should be holding Alta Landing accountable. Nathan gave Alta Landing their certificate of occupancy with conditions. To this day, almost 2 years later, the city has not held them accountable to those conditions. Nathan stated that he wanted carports at Alta Landa, but that our neighbors were against it. Per the city code, your carports are actually required in multifamily. UDC 12.8A states multifamily district parking spaces must be enclosed or covered. If you were to hold them accountable, Nathan, you would have your carports. The codes are outlined in the UDC, yet the city chooses not to hold the developers accountable, or they're just incompetent. Steeplechase neighborhood deserves for the city to work with us, not against us, and everyone in Kennedale deserves for the city to uphold the written code of the city, not blatantly ignore it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Mike Watson.
Hello, Mike Watson, 412 Coker Valley. I'm on the southwest corner of the Alta Landing property. We were here when the city rezoned from single family to multifamily. We were fighting that when it happened. But they assured us that this would be only 2 stories on the outside of the property that's next to ours. They told us green space would be behind our property. So basically, they misled us on that. So the trust factor is totally kaput. So I guess you can see my opinion is going to be no to the going from multifamily to PD. Do they have a valid purpose to request a change? Just because they built these apartments that did not meet current standards is not a good reason. They need to show value to their neighbors, in good faith, do improvements that are requested, and then maybe try to do this. Like I say, just because they made these apartments a higher density than allowed, just so they can sell at a higher price is not a valid reason. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. James Connor.
James Conner, 501 West 3rd Street, Kennedale, Texas. Did want to go and start out by saying that I do oppose this. Also, most zoning ordinances contain the basic elements. Some cities even allow for special districts that are called planning development districts and provide for even greater flexibility in land use. 2 pitfalls that cities must be careful about in avoiding in zoning are spot zoning and contract zoning. It's the latter I want to talk about. Contract zoning is the legal agreement between the city and a property owner to obtain a certain zoning classification in exchange for certain promises by the property owner. Because contract zoning usage, the city council's legislative function, the city council cannot enter into such a contract. And that's what's actually taking place here, because they want to add landscaping and carports. They're going before you guys for a zoning classification that isn't needed. So it's basically contract zoning. On August 20th, 2019, the City Council passed ordinance number 673. It's an ordinance amending the Unified Development Code, also known as the UDC, by introducing additional multifamily regulations by adding a new section 3.6 additional multifamily regulations, amending section 12.8 requiring off-street parking, and table 13.6 buffer area landscape requirements, all for them. The new restrictions, 2 months later, on October 10th, 2019, case number PZ 19-09, to conduct a public hearing for them, Alta 287, the new restrictions were in place before October 10th meeting. The developers of Alta Landing already knew this. However, they decided to go ahead with MF anyway. It was built in non-conforming status, and by that mean, it did not follow the City of Kennedale's UDC. It's over on density, it's over on height. The RBLs do not match what the UDC states, Now they're coming before this commission asking for it to be rezoned as a PD. It didn't meet PD standards at that time, and it doesn't meet PD now. As a former councilman for this city, I have intimate knowledge of this property. I was privy to certain talks and discussions in executive meetings. However, I still cannot discuss those because I have an immunity clause, and I won't either. But what I can tell you is this. The city manager and the city attorney, in discussions with both privately, stated that this property could not ever be rezoned because it is in non-conforming status. The certificate of occupancy does not state this, however, just gives a couple of recommendations. The city manager issued the certificate of occupancy stating that it was in conforming status, and that's not true. If you go back to what the building standards were when they received their approval to build, you will see that. It was built in non-conforming status, and even by today's standards in the new multifamily regulations, it's still in non-conforming status, which means it does not meet the city of Kennedale's UDC requirements.
Thank you, James.
Mr. Frank Morris?
Good evening. My name is Frank Morris. I live at 5300 Independence Avenue in Arlington, which is actually 2 houses from the Kennedale city limits. That's the reason I have a genuine interest in it. I don't have a dog in the hunt for this, but this is my career. I'm one of the top certified code officials in the state of Texas, if not the South. I do this every day as a consultant. I've been a building official of large and small jurisdictions. So I'm very familiar with the guidelines. In reading what I have seen as far as the application, from what I can tell, we're down to what is explained in the application or the staff report to where by going to PD, there's going to be an increase of landscaping. They did pull the carports out of the request, the way I understand it. Also moving the dumpster, and then also the guardrail, which has already been done. I drove by the place today. It's the first time I've ever seen it. Was kind of shocked of the guardrail. I didn't realize that you put what you put down the middle of a highway, but that is a guardrail. That's actually a civil matter. So that's nothing that, I mean, they've already got put in, so it shouldn't even be up for discussion. But still, the way that everything is turned out, that's a civil matter between the landowner of the apartments and the adjacent landowners. It has nothing to do with the building codes. Secondly, far as increasing the landscaping, they can increase landscaping all they want to under the MF current guidelines. It's the same guidelines as if you had a PD. And so, you know, if they want to be a good neighbor, then they can do it right now without having to change to a PD. The only thing that I see in this is moving of the dumpsters. It's hard for me to believe that you'd want to change something to a PD because of moving dumpsters. Granted, I remember when I lived in apartments of hearing the dumpsters trash people early in the morning, just part of life, as I hate to say it. The PD, if you do look at sections 9.1 and 9.2, and I encourage you to do so, this is actually planning a development just like it says. It's when you're starting a new development. We've got an existing facility. Nothing that they're asking to do is going to change. Now, I do see where they're wanting to change some of the guidelines to where it would bring it in compliance. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. And that's the way this building is going to be, no matter if you change guidelines or whatever. I ask you to please look at these items. I see no reason to change it to a PD due to the fact that if this is what they're wanting to do, they can do it under MF except maybe for the dumpster. And that's something that, I think people need to live with. I just wanted to point out what the codes and law said. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have no other requests to speak on this item.
All right, appreciate everybody's time. Staff?
Well, good evening, Planning and Zoning Commissioners. It's good to be with you here tonight, and I want to welcome everybody to our regular meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission. I love that we've got people showing up. I would say an engaged community. I'll take an engaged community over any other type of community any day of the week. And while we're talking about our regular meeting, this body meets every fourth Thursday of the month, so we want to invite you to come on out. Take a listen to a lot of the cases coming up. We hope that you return. Our Board of Adjustment meets the second Tuesday of the month. City Council meets the third Tuesday of the month, and we'd love to see you out at some time. So some of you visit pretty often, but if this is your first time at a public meeting, welcome. This is the part of the process. It's one of my favorite parts of the process. So again, I just wanted to welcome everybody for that. Before we begin, as your staff liaison to the Planning and Zoning Commission, I just wanted to talk to the commission and just to remind kind of what our purview is, or what your purview is we're here to discuss zoning, particularly. This particular case is about a plan development, and the other items I'm hoping I can speak to that were raised in the public hearing concerns. I hope to be able to speak to those as well. Issues such as trash and code compliance issues, it's not a matter really for planning and zoning, unfortunately. It is a matter for community development in our department. So I'm taking plenty of notes here, and it's something that we do take very seriously. Issues such as property valuations and protesting, things of that nature, again, is outside the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so I would say that if we can, as we continue, I plan to keep the conversation strictly to the zoning. And I just wanted to kind of say that from the get-go, the staff as a whole, right, the whole city, but our department, including the city manager and everybody in here, our goal for the last, I would say, year has been to try to find a solution. Try to improve the quality of life for residents that feel they've been taken advantage of, not listened to, lied to at some point. There's a variety of reasons, and that's been already discussed tonight. So our goal has been to try to find a solution and to improve the quality of life. And that, in essence, is the purpose of the plan development that we bring before you tonight. So in December of 22, I accepted the position to come here to Kennedale. Since then, I've had every day has been fun. It's been it is a great community. My background is in building code compliance, and a little planning built in. And every day I get to utilize those skill sets to serve the people in this community, and I look forward to it. And I'm thankful and honored for the opportunity to do so. But in December of 22, my second day here is the first time I walked onto this particular property. It was already built. And so I can't speak to decisions, things that were missed in plan review, anything like that prior to my time coming here, right? So we've heard some dates tonight, 2019, 2021, things of that nature. Folks that were serving in this community could probably speak to better than I could. So when I show up, we had 4 items that were essentially zoning related, nothing building code related, because I'd already talked to our inspectors that had been through the buildings, talked with the fire chief, talked with the fire marshal. So my primary concern for that was satisfied. We had some landscaping issues, trees. We had some lighting issues. They installed some lighting fixtures that were really, really tall, and the ordinance required that they be 14 feet max. They were pushing 20-something. And so we asked, and Wood Partners said, sure, we'll get that done. We had an issue with the fence, it not being stained, not being fenced. I had a discussion with City Council in January of '23, discussed my reasonings as to why I believe the fence that was provided is probably a better, it was installed safer than had it been flipped the other way, because, look, if you get a kid that's climbing up to a fence and they put their foot on that middle rail, I'd hate for them to take a tumble on the other side of that retaining wall there. So that was that decision that we had. And so we had lighting, landscaping, screening, and then we had erosion control and drainage. And I thought the best way to address that was to put conditions on the CO to require, as the UDC requires, that they go back and seed until they can reestablish ground cover. Now, this is unique around the property, is that you have a fence maintenance easement essentially around the retaining wall. So you got a rock and a hard place, and that's not proverbial, that's literally there. So what can grow back there is still a mystery to me. Again, I'm not a landscape person, but it's one of the items that we've been back there. I've been personally back there about 3 or 4 times. So that is a challenge. So I will speak to that, but again, these are items that I can't speak to prior to December of '22. But since then, we've been focused on trying to find a solution. And so we had discussions with them about the guardrail. And I want to discuss about the guardrail specifically. Wasn't a requirement, still isn't a requirement in our development code, and that's something that we're actually working to add into our development code as we speak. At the time, it was not a requirement. 3 stories. At the time, it was okay. You could build to 3 stories. It did have a max, but today, it's 2 stories, because that was changed a while back. But the guardrail, we asked for the guardrail, and they said yes. Took some time, because you've got to contract, you've got to find the budgeting for it, and the guardrail went in. What expedited that was an unfortunate incident that caused it to expedite the timeline, but it went in. So everything that I've asked the developer to do, I've never had any pushback. They've been very, very, really easy to work with, I'll say. I work with all sorts of types of developers in a couple different cities, and some give you a hard time. That has not been my experience with this particular developer. But rule number 1 in development is that you don't fall in love with the developer, because you don't really know them. We don't know each other, right? So we base everything based off of what they say they're going to do and whether they do it or not. So the things that I've asked for, the things that we asked, the community asked for, they've done. And so all that to say this is that we've been focused on improving the quality of life for the community. Okay, so I'll give you just a rundown. It's in your staff report, but if you recall, a couple months ago, there was a request for a planned development that came before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that motion to approve failed 2-2. It was going to move on to council, but before it was going to go to council, they withdrew because they wanted to have some more meetings with the community. I said that was probably a good idea. At those meetings, they heard some more wants and desires and requests. And so following those meetings, we had additional conversations with their staff about, okay, well, what did you hear? And so coming out of those particular meetings, those particular wants, for example, tonight we heard more trees, taller fence, the dumpsters being noisy, wanted to relocate them. We also heard tonight that flooding has been getting better, right? We heard tonight, what is the guarantee, what are the penalty? I'm going to speak to that in just a minute. But following those meetings, those were the asks. And so the prior submittal included carports. I thought that would be I lived in an apartment once, I'm sure many of you lived in an apartment. It's hot in Texas. You'd like to park your car maybe under a carport, so it's not 100, 200 degrees when you walk into it. Thought it'd be a nice addition. At that last public hearing, some of the community discussed that they would prefer not to see carports. Okay, well, they obliged, and so did we. So we said, okay, if that's not something that would be amenable, then what do we have, right? So we have relocating of the dumpsters, additional landscaping, which is trees. So along the property line, and they have a presentation here in a minute, so they'll go into detail. but they've added additional trees along the property line to provide those screenings. They've added, they want to extend the fence, 2-foot extension to make it taller, right? The guardrail for me was paramount because I can't require something that isn't in the books. So tonight we talked about what we've heard is, what could they do, right? They certainly could. On April 15th, you can certainly pay more tax if you want to, but what is required, right, is what's in my world. Do you meet the minimum requirements? And they have, right, to an extent, outside of the things that were kind of discussed prior to 2022. Now, how do we require those changes? The only way that I know to do that is to have an adopted site plan that is tied to an ordinance. And so on this, in your staff report, and what they've presented is a site plan that will have those elements: the guardrail, the higher screening, the additional trees, the relocating of the dumpsters. Now, these things are important because as a code enforcement officer, been a code enforcement officer for many years, I do what's called zoning compliance. And so if there's a dead tree on a planned development, what says they have to replace it? If they've already provided the minimum, if they have already met the minimum landscape requirements, right? Well, the planned development, the adopted site plan. What's on that adopted site plan? If it's there, they got to provide it. Having the same conversations with Town Center and some other places in town. I'm pulling these planned developments, these ordinances that were passed by City Council. I'm pulling up the adopted site plans and I'm comparing that to what was approved. In my career, I've found properties that on the adopted site plan, they did not provide additional parking areas. So I then could go to that person and say, hey man, on this site plan, you were supposed to provide, 10 more spaces, 12 more spaces over here, and you never did. What happened? Well, the city never followed up. Well, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to follow up on that. Now, another part of the site plan that's important is the ordinance that's drafted that it accompanies it. Now, following this particular meeting, depending on what the result is, we will then get with the city attorney to draft an ordinance. And on that ordinance, we'll have penalties just like any other ordinance. And so tonight we heard, what is the guarantee? How can we ensure that that's going to be done? Well, how about a penalty, right? Every ordinance that you pull, Ordinance 673 that was mentioned tonight, at the very end of that, there is a statement there that says, failure to comply results in a misdemeanor, and there's language that follows that, with its penalty up to $2,000 per day. That can get pretty pricey. In my career, I've actually had to issue citations every day, and when we've gone to court, we've asked $2,000 per day because they were serious zoning violations. So that is your guarantee. That is your guarantee there. What is it in writing? What is it? Who confirms that? Does the planning and zoning confirm it? No. Does the staff confirm it? No. It's a signature of the mayor. How does that work? So on the ordinance, every ordinance is signed by the mayor. It's adopted by council, voted on by council, signed by the mayor, and that directs me and my staff to go and enforce that particular ordinances. Now, depending on the developer, they're a high-end developer, caliber developer, and they want to command certain types of rents. Let's say we're talking about rental. They want to command certain types of rents. It is in their best interest to exceed minimum standards and to ensure that their property maintenance is above. Because if they want to charge in today's market $2,500 a month, about what it costs to get a mortgage, right? It better be a nice place. And so they have a vested interest to maintain their property. And so when they failed to do so, the city can then step in. Last fall, the city council adopted the property maintenance code. That was something that wasn't in place in 2019 and in 2021 when this was all being discussed. And so if you look at properties around town or other apartment complexes, and if your concern is that, hey, I don't want them to end up like that, well, a result of that is because the city staff at the time did not have the tools to enforce. We do now. At the time, our nuisance ordinances were very, very minimal. Those have since been updated this last fall. We updated our entire nuisance ordinance. We adopted the property maintenance code. So again, I just want to mention that because that is how staff, the tools, those are the tools we have in addition to an ordinance for a plan development would go to ensure that the property maintenance remains. So that's just kind of a summary of kind of what's occurred, what our plan is, why the intent to get a plan development. And I want to talk about compatibility. Again, we've heard section 9.1 of the UDC mentioned tonight. It does say that seeking a plan development just to whitewash the sins of the past of zoning is not enough reason. It's not a reason to get a plan development. But it does say it aims to improve compatibility with adjacent uses, as noted in section 9.1 of the Development Code. So in our aim, again, is to improve the quality of life and improve compatibility by requiring them to put in more trees, to raise the level of the fence, to keep the guardrail there, because it's adopted by the site plan, to relocate the dumpsters to another location that won't be noisy around the neighbors. That is the intent, and that's the intent of the plan development, is to require that. Lastly, I want to discuss about zoning change protest. I do want to make note. So in your packet, you were provided with a staff report, and you were provided with a protest verification worksheet. So all the protests that have come in, look at the names. Does it match what's on the appraisal district? Does that count towards that? And it's really only the folks that fall within that buffer. So you'll see an Excel spreadsheet in there. And in doing that, we left off 4 people. There was 2 wives and 2 husbands. And the reason being is that when you pull up our GIS map and you hover over it and you click it, it shows a condensed version of the Tarrant Appraisal District information. We went back before the meeting and updated that spreadsheet. So we wanted to make sure that everybody that is protesting this, that the square footage of their property that's within the buffer gets counted. So we've since updated that. That took that percentage from 14 and some change to 18.76. And as you heard tonight, we expect to have more protests coming prior to city council. But why that's important is that when you hit 20% protest of a zoning change, it requires a supermajority from council to approve that. And so I believe that's probably their aim to do that. And I anticipate we'll probably hit that threshold if we get some more signatures in. But again, I did want to make that correction. The staff report online and the spreadsheet online has been updated. For those of you watching online, be sure to click and subscribe. I always like to say that. We always get a couple folks watching. But again, I did want to make that distinction. So tonight, obviously the staff, we recommend approval because at the end of the day, our hope is to provide the additional trees for the screening, higher fencing, relocating the dumpsters, and the guardrail. So if that's not something that you want, then vote accordingly. If it's something that you would like to see, then again, our staff we recommend approval. That concludes my staff report on this particular item. The applicant is here, and they do have a presentation that they want to bring before the commission. Thank you. After that, I'm happy to come back up, answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Come on ahead and.
What do I do here? Play it. I'll go with this. You can see it. Hi, Dallas Cothram, 2201 Main Street, Dallas, Texas.
I've done, I don't know, hundreds, maybe 1,000 zoning cases in my career in hundreds of jurisdictions. And this is maybe the strangest one ever. The neighbors have been very nice, and I'm not sure they should be necessarily. I mean, everybody is injured on this, and I've tried to be pretty sympathetic on that. Wood did not do the original zoning case. They made an application, it got approved, and they built it. It's legally non-conforming. So I think that's an important distinction, is it's legal, but it doesn't meet the current rules. So they haven't done anything wrong, under the rule book, but I can totally understand why neighbors are unhappy with what happened. I think the city's unhappy that it got permitted and probably shouldn't have. And so I think my role in working on this is, how do I, give the patient enough medicine to make it well? And so there's two options, it seems like. One, everybody can decide that retribution and anger and being upset is more important. Or two, we could do a PD and give the property the medicine it needs, and it still administers a lot of justice that Wood Partners has to stomach. And that's what our packet shows, is that list that you have in blue and orange and green, those are all the things the neighbors, they told us they wanted us to fix. And we're perfectly happy to do all of those things and have it refereed by the city for forever. But we're not going to do those things if it doesn't pass, because we're not in a better position. We're legally non-conforming. So this is a catch-22. I understand the neighbors have said, you should do this. Well, it turns out that owning a $50 million apartment building is almost the same as owning a home. When you have a non-conforming asset, or you're in the floodplain or something, your lender won't just cough up more money for you to make the improvements. So, this is, a painful and difficult process for us to, how do I advance this, Danny? Oh, there we are. Okay, so on with the show, and I'll make some other comments as we go. I want to address some of the remarks of the speakers, but I'll try and stay in order here. So, really, we're sorry. We've tried to listen, and we're prepared to act on our promises and have the city attorney and code enforcement hold us accountable. I'm not in charge of the city. I can't make them do that, but I've done hundreds of PDs, and I think they're an excellent tool, and that's why we did that. A PD is a social compact between the owner, who right now is Wood Partners, but it might be somebody else in 50 or years. It likely will change hands. 2, the neighbors, and 3, the city. And we all have to turn our keys at the same time to agree on that compact. But it becomes really easy to referee it after the fact, because it's all in the ordinance and it's all in the exhibits. And so, yes, the city has changed its rules on multifamily since this has been built. We cannot become legally conforming without tearing down units and without removing a story, and our lender's not going to let us do that. So we really only have two options. We can limp along like we are, and that limits our ability to make improvements, or we can fix it and spend a lot of money and address really all those things the neighbors want us to do. So that's why we picked a PD. We can't fix it under what your rules are without you changing all your rules on multifamily. That seems like too much medicine. Okay, so these are kind of the highlights of, that I heard in meetings, and I want to kind of walk through. There were more. Who is Wood Partners? Is Wood Partners willing to make changes? Who lives at Alta Landing? Should I be concerned about my property values? And what happens if somebody else buys the property? And some of these are zoning and some of these are not. Staff tried to make it about zoning. I try to make things about what neighbors are concerned about, because they're not professional zoning people like I am. So this is, I think, and I showed this at a community meeting, when the Hunt family did Rosewood Court, this is where Ocean Prime is, right across from the Crescent. So when Mrs. Hunt decided they were going to build this headquarters building, and it was going to have restaurant and retail and a multifamily building, anyone in America would have liked to have done the multifamily. I mean, it's a great site. They picked Wood Partners to do it. And I think that says a lot about them. And why do they do that? Like, I've worked with Ryan here, who's with Wood Partners for 15 years, and he's not even the senior most Dallas guy. I've worked with his boss for 24, 23 years. This is pretty unusual in this kind of real estate world where people stay at the same company a long time and are accountable. And I've done, I don't know, 25, 30, a lot of projects that don't have complaints. And when they go into a market, it doesn't matter if it's uptown or it's in Arlington or it's in Kennedale, they always set the market. So they're going to be at the highest end. And in fact, this is the highest priced taxed piece of property. Just so you know, we were taxed last year at $47 million, and it went up this year to $49.5 million. They did protest their taxes. Everybody in Texas is allowed to protest their taxes, every year, whether you're a commercial property owner or you're a single-family homeowner. So they didn't do anything, I think, that was wrong. That's allowed for under state law, and they did do it, but they went up another $2.5 million in this last year. And that's not unusual. So the other things I think that are notable are they are local here, and when they sell things to people that are much larger institutional buyers than themselves. Wood Partners is a fairly large company, but they sell to teacher retirement funds and REITs and large insurance companies. So if they sell this, that's good for the city. I have another slide on that, but I'll just cover it now. When they sell, it creates another taxable moment for the city, and it will sell for more money. So you'll see this when multifamily properties sell. It's good for the city. It's good for the school district because it goes up on the tax rolls as opposed to maybe the $2.5 million. So if we don't have conforming zoning, it's really hard for us. We won't be able to get another loan, and we will have a hard time making another sale. So it's better for every citizen, and the city, everybody else is really in line with the ability to be able to sell this to another operator that's much better heeled. Okay, so Wood Partners, if you don't know them, you go by their projects. I think they're probably about the most responsible for the Dallas Design District. I did 2 projects for them at almost the same time when that was known as the stuff on the other side of Stemmons. There wasn't even a name for it. They created the design district with 2 multifamily projects that got people in. I'll also say the Meddlesome Moth Bar helped that was next to you. But this was an unproven area. And so they go in places, and that's what they do. They really execute. They're getting better rents than they thought they'd get here. And you'll look and see who the tenants are. So here's that project, one of their projects that when it opened at $34 million, and it's now worth, almost $70 million. So multifamily goes up each year, and it's, your average home value here is $340-something thousand according to the census. That $2.5 million each year, it's significant. It's like adding a bunch of new homes. Okay, so here's the list of what we've done so far. That's in that column of you should do that. Okay, yes, we should, but some of these we didn't have to. The lights, the neighbors were right. That was neighbor driven, that they put in too tall of lights. We fixed it, and we did LED lights that are not as bright. We added the guardrail. We've moved to valet trash pickup. We've put signage on Joplin Road so for no parking, so it doesn't block one guy's driveway. We've installed trash signs. We've addressed the commercial vehicle overnight parking issue. We've added some trees already, and on the plan, you'll see there are a lot more. And then we did 2 fairly expensive third-party studies on drainage and the retaining wall. Now, I know the neighbors would like for us to just go out and fix it. Well, we had to know what we were going to fix and how we'd fix it. So getting those plans done, waiting for it to rain, and all those kind of things are, we needed to know how we're going to fix it and then how much it's going to cost to fix those things. And it turns out that retaining wall is operating appropriately, but we did that. Okay, so here's the site plan. You'll see those 2 dumpsters are going to be consolidated into the circled or highlighted one in the upper right corner. So we're removing all the dumpsters that are adjacent to single-family residential and moving them to one dumpster that is not central to the property, and we're going to make it larger. So that's a change we would make in the future that is neighbor suggested. I think it'll have a real good input. We're adding we would increase the height of the fence from 6 feet to 8 feet. That's all the green line. And then we would add this additional fence that I call the top of the hill fence, because it's at the top of the hill to provide another visual barrier from where the homes are up to the apartments. So those were all things, and those are all in the ordinance. They're all in the exhibits, and we'd be required to do those. And then here are the landscape plans. The green trees are all the ones we're adding. We're not deficient on the number of trees legally. We're just right now deficient on the number of trees that are desirable. Does that make sense between the difference? So now, if you pass the PD, all of these trees become required. So if they die, we have to replace them. So that's one of the nuances of what we get out of it is if we planted trees now and they died, we could, or we wanted to remove them, we could, as long as we had the minimum number. We're requiring many more of ourselves in those locations. So it's a fairly large number of trees that we're adding and requiring of ourselves, just like we're requiring the 8-foot fence as opposed to 6, and we're requiring ourselves to only have one dumpster. If we wanted to add a dumpster later, we'd have to come back in and amend the PD. Another thing we're doing that's not in the list that I just put in because I think it's good form when I've had cases where there are problems with neighbors, we're requiring of ourselves to have an annual meeting with the neighborhood, and we're requiring ourselves to notice the neighborhood anytime we seek an amendment on the zoning. So they would know before 30 days beforehand before we file any amendment. So we're trying to come up with as many tools as possible to show that we want to be a good neighbor, and that's one thing, but requiring yourself to be a good neighbor by ordinance is different. Okay, so if this were to pass tonight, I've heard from a number of neighbors, and I don't think they're wrong. Some of this is, how are we going to pay for this? I mean, like, and I know that's not really, it's not a plan commission problem, and it's not a neighbor problem, but how you pay for things in the real world is always a real estate problem. So, because we have no assurance that this will pass. So we have said if this passes here tonight, we would do some of the low-hanging fruit here that are not as hard to do. And we already have contracts. We've shared that with the neighbors, that we've received these bids. We gave them what those bids were. And if you look, these are the numbers that correspond to the grid. All the yellow ones we'd get out to do. We'd add now some of these, like the first one on the list, it will take a while to get the contract let, get a permit from the city, and get the materials to the site, and it's a job that takes a while to do. So, but we would get about doing that. We'd clean up the no man's land. We'd add the French drains and do the additional drainage work that by study maybe isn't required, but by the neighbors will make them feel better, and that's fine. We'd add the additional rock down there so there's more void space, and we'd grind the stumps, plant the trees, etc. So add the top of the hill fence. There's a lot of stuff there we're committed to doing, which is really everything except consolidate the dumpsters, which I don't believe we can get a building permit for because it's not on the current site plan, and it's sort of a catch-22. Why won't y'all do these things ahead of time? Well, we had to get a building permit to do them. It's harder. Okay, this is maybe non-zoning too, but people ask, so I thought I'd make it part of the record. There are 378 residents at the property. They range from their early 20s to almost 90. There are about 30 seniors there, and the incomes are pretty high. They're very consistent with, the local economy. The thing I was most surprised about in digging through the numbers was how many people have moved from other states, and we do. Maybe 15 or 20% of our work is municipal based where we look at this. All these cities are competing to get new people. You want people that move from Kansas and maybe even from California, because if you capture them as they move here, they're more likely to buy a home in your community and to send their kids to school in your community and become part of your community over time. So they move from 23 different states and from a large number from Dallas County and East Texas, if you're interested. But where do they work? These are people that are teaching your kids. They're police officers. They're working in local government. They're engineers and architects. It's a wide range. So here was a list. Not surprisingly, California was the #1 state, and Illinois, I won't read it, but 23 states represented by people that have moved here, and they chose to make this their home. It also sort of shows why Wood did the project there. They knew there was pent-up demand here for this location. Okay, so I also did these numbers by one bedroom. One of the things that the PD also addresses right now, your minimum efficiency apartment is 500, requires 600 square feet, while we have a couple of units that are only 582. But if you look at those others, our PD also requires us to have larger units than what the UDC requires for the other categories. So for instance, the UDC only requires 1,000 square feet for the 3-bedroom, and our average size is 2,800. The minimum, the smallest one's 1,520. So, in one category where we're deficient, but in the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3 bedrooms, we're higher, and the PD addresses those things. So again, I think, you can look at what our density is per unit. It's pretty low, but the incomes are pretty high. Okay, I find this is a useful tool, in trying to explain who lives here and why. With a lot of these people moving from out of state, it's probably not surprising. They're renters by choice. They're maybe not sure where they want to live. They don't know where they want to buy a house. They're not familiar with the area or their job, maybe, all those things. So in our example here, and I picked this, this is the big teacher pay for KISD and the police pay for the police here. And these numbers don't include what the healthcare benefits and those things cost the entities. But, this is what they would make. And these people qualify for, either a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment and can save $1,100 a month towards being able to buy a home. So our teacher and our police officer are well qualified here. And if you looked at those incomes, it's pretty good. Okay, so I did do a tax slide on the new number, $49,500,000. That's what Wood will pay this year for their taxes after they, I think it had been appraised at over 50 million, and it whittled down to slightly under 50. Okay, so if you look at this on a per acre basis, Wood Partners is paying a lot more than anyone else is. And I think that's typically how economists look at things, as on a per acre basis. But they're going to pay the city of Kennedale this year $350,000 on taxes, which compared to the average home, they pay $2,300. For KISD, they're going to pay $563,000 as opposed to the average home in KISD pays $2,700. So, there are tax consequences here, and I will say that non-conforming properties are not as desirable tax-wise as conforming ones are. And that's really why we're here, is we need to have a conforming asset. We need that for our lender, we need it for our insurance, we need it for all those reasons. And because of that, we're willing to make all these changes and spend money to do it. I don't know that it'll make the neighbors happy. I think that it won't, but I think in some ways it will at least resolve some of the hard feelings that we will address things they've complained about. Okay, so another way to slice this is our taxes pay each year for the salaries of slightly more than 10 teachers or 6 police officers. So I think I said this in a community meeting. There's typically, and this is in most communities, maybe I can think of a couple of places in the Metroplex, multifamily is viewed as less than and somehow hurts cities. I don't believe that's true, and they pay a disproportionate amount of taxes to that end. The city that has the highest incidence per capita of multifamily is University Park. Its average home value is over $2 million. So I don't believe there's a direct, it's just something people feel. And here it is in chart form of what the city and Alta would pay. I don't know, we need to go over that. We looked at, again, if you look at our couple, which is our typical renters, they can buy a house in this city. And maybe they're choosing not to, but they definitely can afford to do that. And I'd argue people that are teaching your kids and policing your neighborhoods make good residents. Here's one, they can afford right at $600,000. So our renters are a net contributor, and I have a slide later. Let me see if I can find it. Well, maybe not. Renters have a lot more disposable income than typically do homeowners. I mean, for a variety of reasons. Okay, so sort of in conclusion, I want to address some of those other things. We'd be happy to add another condition if your city attorney would about this not being a HUD property. That came up in community meetings. We are not going to go from having the highest rents in the market to being a affordable housing developer. Wood is not an affordable housing developer. I have affordable housing developer clients. They absolutely can't do that. Their lender won't let them. So if your city attorney wants us to add that as a condition, or you want to read that in, we're happy to say that we will not be an affordable housing property. I mean, we want to and plan to have the highest rents in the subdistrict, and we already have that. So we're certainly not going to go from $2,300 to $700. I mean, no developer would do that. That seems like sort of a scare tactic of, what you're afraid of. And we're not challenging our taxes because of that. And we're not somehow wanting to become conforming so that we can get a HUD loan. I mean, we want to continue. I mean, if you're a multifamily owner, you're just like a homeowner. You want your house to sell for in the future and be as good an asset as possible. Part of that for us is having conforming zoning. Several people referenced that we're in violation. I take it that they mean we could do better. That's what we're trying to do here tonight. We're trying to do better, and we're trying to find a legal vehicle that council can pass and adopt, and we have to follow those rules. We're not illegal right now. We're just non-conforming, and we're legally non-conforming. So that's a nuance, but it's hard for us to figure out how to do all of these things and pay for all of these things, when we're just legally non-conforming. And we are making, one gentleman said, we're not conforming. Well, we're trying to. So I guess in conclusion, that mending wall, the famous poem by Robert Frost about good fences make good neighbors, that's really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to build a taller fence, build 2 taller fences, and we're trying to put it in the rule book so that it's really easy to referee what that is for the city. And we encourage and would desire the city to do it vigorously. I mean, we're happy to have staff come out, and in some jurisdictions they do. We would love for code enforcement to come out and verify that every single one of those trees is planted and the dumpsters got moved and all of those things. But we can't do that before we have an ordinance that provides it. I mean, we had asked for, and I don't think the neighbors thought it was necessary, we had said we'd escrow the funds and put it in a local title company so that they would believe they would be there. We still are willing to do that, but we're not in a position at this point to address a lot of these issues until we have conforming zoning. That's why we picked a PD. If there had been any other vehicle, I promise I would have picked it, because it takes a lot more effort to write all these conditions and make sure everything's in there. And your city doesn't require it. This is sort of unusual in that we did a site plan and a super detailed, how many page landscape plan? Like 7? A 7-page landscape plan. So it's very detailed. And we have to live by that. I mean, and we want to. So I'm happy to answer questions or comments or complaints. I'll say the last thing is I appreciated the neighbors went to a bunch of meetings. We went there on the site. They gave us the list of 19 things. I think almost all of them are resolved or were deemed unimportant, like the cameras or their HOA meeting in our clubhouse. I mean, everything that was suggested to us, we've said we'd do. But to do those things, we need a PD for it to make economic sense and legal sense for us. Because again, we're legally non-conforming. That's a bad situation. To go back to that social compact, right now, all 3 parties are in a non-tenable social compact. The city doesn't like that they made the error. Wood Partners doesn't like that they have that they have an asset of $50 million that is non-conforming, and the neighbors don't like that they don't have the trees and the taller fence. I don't blame them. There are some things, had I done this zoning case originally, and I didn't, and Wood Partners didn't do it either. They just bought the deal. Had I done this, maybe the thing never would have happened because the neighbors would have let us know that it was not desirable, or we would have had to do a townhome deal or something else. But now we have a patient that's sick, and I don't know any other way to do this is to give it medicine. And I just tried to listen to what the neighbors wanted and put it all into the PD. Like, they're afraid of a parking structure. Okay, we wrote it in there. We can't have a parking structure. I mean, and I'm happy to write more things in there. I had kind of forgotten about the HUD thing. Fine, happy to put that in there too, if the city attorney will let me. I think the site plan originally said we could have 280 units. We only built 270. We're only allowing ourselves 270. So there's no intent to trick or fool or hide anything. I mean, we're hiding in broad daylight with very detailed exhibits, which is, I would think, what every city wants every development to do. So I hate we're here like we started with. I'm sorry. I think we should end with it too. This is not a desirable place. I've never had one of these zoning cases. I don't like it. And it's a very awkward place. I feel bad for the neighbors. I feel bad for the city. And I feel particularly bad for my client because they didn't do it on purpose. And it's a problem. So we'd ask you to take a step and pass it so that we can start on fixing the problem and getting the patient healthy. And maybe over time, we'll demonstrate that we're not a problem, and all the trees and the fence and those things. And the biggest benefit is moving that dumpster. It is not for us. It's a pain for us to go to one dumpster that's not in the middle of the project and adding the valet trash, though I think the tenants apparently like the valet trash pickup. So fine, we're gonna do it because we messed up and we have to. So thank you guys, I appreciate it, appreciate your volunteer service.
I'm going to ask one question. I just feel like that the conversations we had from the concerned folks out there, I'm going to start with this. This was a done deal long before any of us really were here.
Yeah.
So we can't go back in time and correct that issue. What we can do is to make it most tolerable for all parties. With that being said, looking at the requirements and a lot of the concerns out here, they kind of ask the same question, have the same concerns, and I'm just going to kind of go with the elephant in the room with it. What exactly, can you speak kind of layman's terms, especially those involved here? What is it that is the barrier? What challenges are you looking at as far as the barrier to actually perform these without the zoning requirements?
Well,
Is it funding or is
it's funding.
Not?
We can't, our lender won't free up the money for us to make.
So if this is changed, the lender then becomes?
Happy to, and we can get out of our construction loan and get a larger one. We also, I mean, this, and don't take, this is, I hope this is educational and not like I'm threatening or, I mean, and I'll use an example. There are people out there that buy C and D apartments and they base it off of how much the rent is. Well, sometimes that doesn't work. Think you got these old projects and they have the boiler goes out, or a bunch of people move out. That becomes an asset and they can't do much with it. And that's why old properties are a problem. They don't have the resource to fix things or to repair them if there's a tornado or those sorts of things. So non-conforming assets, our lender is not helpful. And that's our problem. It's not that Wood's not willing to do this. I mean, they're absolutely willing to do all of them and can easily, if we have a PD where it becomes a conforming asset. And I know all that is sort of like just noise to neighbors, but it's really just kind of the reality. It's the same thing a homeowner faces when they have a non-conforming asset and they're in a floodplain, they can't improve the property. And the city's stuck too because we can't get permits for things that aren't on the site plan. So it's sort of that broken social compact. That's why, and I agree with you, I think this is going to hopefully be palatable, like slightly better. And over time, as the trees grow, and the good fences make good neighbors, that's the best we can do right now. But not doing it, and I understand that there's always a temptation, and I've learned this, I used to referee college basketball, and then I realized I'm doing this in my real life too on zoning cases. People don't like change, and they also don't like the way things are right now. And it's okay. I know all of these people have genuine feelings and they've shared them with me on the phone and by email and in meetings. They deserve a solution. Not passing this, all it does is, we're gonna all be right here for forever. And I don't mean that as a threat or anything, but we can't make the improvements that the people want. So this was the only thing our staff could figure out. And like my colleague Danny, who's here, she was a planning director in the city. We got 7 or 8 of those people in Dallas, and we all sat down and tried to figure out, because this just doesn't happen, how can we fix it? This is how you fix it. And if there are other things that would make it more palatable or reasonable, we're open to that. We were one of the parties that make the mistake. The neighbors are not one of the parties that made a mistake. They are blameless in all of this. They're the victim.
Let me back up and
Sure.
maybe readdress what I'm asking or what I'm stating here. It sounds like to me there is almost a disconnect of understanding between different parties.
Yes.
So what I was trying to bridge to and bring this kind of maybe to the forefront, what I'm hearing is you have a lender as it sits right now in the zoning aspect of it that is going to be non-motivated to perform any further lending to allow for the capital to make these changes. However, if it is changed to a type of zoning that it now becomes required, this changes the terms and conditions of your loan requirements that allows you to have that funding.
That's
Is
right.
that what we're looking at?
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's, I think, the disconnect.
And if-
Understanding, what I said, we got folks out there that say, why are we doing this? You can't make this change. Why am I forcing you to, or why are we forcing you to go to a different zoning? Why can't you just make that change? Well, that I think is the answer that's been missing.
That, and as a good faith gesture, where is that slide?
Well, I'm looking at the fact straight up.
Yes.
If you don't have the zoning that is going to be adequate to allow you to have the funding to make the changes, you're kind of in that cart before the horse.
Yes.
So I want to put that out there to let the folks know that, that, like I said, that seems to be, to me, the missing link of the entire misunderstanding. If there's a way to go from one way or another. That's my understanding.
We can afford to do or start doing these things before. And my thought is that if this were to pass tonight, we don't hurry to council in August and we go in September. We can afford to do some of these things like the drainage. That's that was the first thing that was ever mentioned to me. And then I went out and visited the site, and I believe the civil engineer when she tells me that it works right, but I also believe the neighbors that have yards there that are seeing a difference. They may not be civil engineers, but if there's standing water, so we're gonna fix it. And it may be over-engineered, fine. We're gonna put the rock down, we're gonna put the new pipe in and connect it. Great, we're gonna get all that done. So with that, we could come back to council, hopefully, with more of those 19 things checked off the list, where the neighbors maybe have more confidence that Wood's going to do it. They won't all be done. It's a in-between to get to that point. But yes, you're right on the lender. When we have a site plan and an ordinance that says thou shalt do these things, they have a responsibility as our lender to make sure that we can do those things. I mean, it's the same thing if there were a catastrophic event. That's what the lender relies on, is these documents that, okay, and your insurer, okay, this is what we can rebuild. And that certainly happened. Rowlett and Garland and some of that area, they had apartments that were completely, taken away, you might recall, a few years ago.
Okay, and that's the thing that makes more sense to me now that I kind of looked at this. It's not a threat of I'm not going to do this if you don't pass that. To me, it's kind of a lender issue, if you will, where there's no return on investment.
Right.
Because they're not going to bring any more money up front if there's no return on that investment for them. Excuse me. So to change that to a different planning that allows them to say, okay, now there's a bit of a change requirement because now the investment becomes less if we don't make the requirements. So that makes sense.
It requires us to do it. That's the other thing. We're going to the lender and showing them, yeah, we are conforming,
but we're required to do these things. I'm okay with us having a reasonable time frame. I've had cities do that too, usually before it's built, but they tell you, you have to have such and stuff done by this date. Okay, I mean, fine, give us a reasonable amount of time to move these things. By the end of the year or whatever, should happen before then. But with a reasonable date of completion, that makes it easy for code enforcement to, you've either done it or you haven't done it. But that you've hit, Chairman, you've hit on the head the conundrum that we have that hurts our credibility and upsets the neighbors, rightfully so, because they just want all this stuff done. And the paper to them is not important. All the paperwork matters to me, and it matters to the lender, and it matters to the owner. I sure really like some of the neighbors. They've been nice to me while they fussed at me. But all of it, at least they've been super honest. Like, I got a good airing out from them about what the problems are. That's much better than me guessing. And then there were like 3 or 4 things on there we just talked out that were like, okay, that's not that big a deal. So they were very reasonable, but they do want to be heard. And our staff at Master Plan really tried to write an ordinance that is super tight, that we don't have any wiggle room. We have to perform because that's their only assurance. I can't fix what code enforcement didn't do in the past, or they shouldn't have issued the permit. I can come up with a good ordinance and a good set of conditions and a good set of exhibits that if we mess up, we either get fined or we fix it.
And I'm going to tell you, just caveat a little bit on that. If I was the neighborhood over there and I wasn't understanding the lending part of it, I would almost feel like I was being held hostage. If you don't change this, you're not getting what you want. I mean, that literally, I think, is how it came across. But now bridging the idea of, okay, well, I can't do it unless the lender has a reason, or we can force the lender into saying, we need this now because of conformity. That makes a little bit of difference.
Well, and Wood said, we decided over the last couple of days after the neighbors, I mean, some of this is, and it maybe shouldn't be, but a lot of zoning is emotional. For all the parties, including the developer, you'd be surprised. And this is not one of my developer clients that likes a big fight. That's not why they hire us. And we almost never get in these. And it wasn't this time. Everybody's been very polite to each other. But they did agree to some of these things because they believe the neighbors want to see some action. We're going to get out there and clean up no man's land. We're going to put the rock down and we're going to do the drainage. And we can start next week on that one and have a contractor ready. Now, there's still 13 other things, but I'm hopeful if we can come back in September, there'll be a little more confidence that these guys are going to follow through. And I'm still happy to escrow the money, so that it's all there. I mean, any reasonable solution to make the patient healthy, I am totally happy to do that, because what we currently have, we're legal. We're just non-conforming, and it drives them crazy. And I get it. And when I tell them that, I know they're like, it's like Charlie Brown's parents. Why, that's not an answer.
So you mentioned the lending issue. Do you have documentation stating that they will not approve a lending?
I mean, we could get that if you wanted. I mean, if that makes a difference, but.
I believe so. I think having that documentation would make a difference.
I think that would help the citizens out here in understanding, because I'm going to put it like this. I think we've all, adults out here, have purchased a car sometime in their life. And if they have a wife or a husband or a significant other in the household, a lender's going to look at it and say, well, you already have one car out there. Why are you buying another one? Mm-hmm. Well, I've got a second person over here. Oh, okay, that makes sense. They wouldn't give you money to buy a second one unless you were highly, inundated in funding. But the fact that you have that second person out there, in this case, would be a PD change. Now it makes sense that, yes, you have a need and a requirement that is going to be satisfiable and make our investors happy. So, I think I understand that. But, if that's something that...
we can get a lender letter, I would imagine, of a paragraph about why, how they see it. And again, they see it their way. The neighbors see it their way. I have felt the whole time like I'm the mouse and the cats are playing with me. I'm just kind of getting thrown around, and I get it, and I get paid to do this, so it's okay. But this is such an unusual, I mean, like, I just don't have any experience of this, and hope I don't have to do it again ever.
Well, in our position, we're here to speak on behalf of the citizens as citizens.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it as if I was sitting in their shoes, these are the feelings I would have. And you're right, it's an emotional shock to a lot of these things. You know, you buy a home and suddenly apartments come up. It's almost like you buy a home and they put a strip mall there. Wow, there goes my property back. I can understand that.
Right, and I knew, I mean, the first time when I listened to the tape of some of the neighbors, I knew the first thing I needed to figure out is how did this come to happen? Because I believed them when they said they thought it was only 2 stories. And I don't know how that happened, and I didn't represent the case, but we're stuck with it because it certainly isn't 2 stories. Is that letter something you need before you vote here and we hold it, or is it something we just need to have before we go to council? I just need direction.
Personally, I would prefer it before we voted.
Okay, I mean, look, at this point, we want this thing to pass. That's why we held it before. We've worked hard to incorporate every suggestion. I hadn't thought of that. I wish I had. That would have been, I'll do that next time. You've taught me a trick.
And that's what I was getting at. Like I said, I think there was a misunderstanding of what was actually the barrier to doing things as an MF versus a PD. And I don't think that was ever conveyed to the people that have a stakeholder in this. It may not have been a thought on your radar as well. So
no, I could have told the neighbors that, like, the study we did on the retaining wall and the study on the flooding or the drainage. I mean, that was 50 or I mean, they were expensive. I mean, and I just didn't want to tell them because that's our problem. I mean, but maybe had I given them that information, is we're spending like real money on these things. Maybe that would have made a difference too. I just chose not to because I don't know. I just don't usually talk about the money my client spends, but
it's in terms of business.
Yeah, it is. But I think the neighbors might have liked to know. And those are things that take a while to perform. Like you got to get on their radar. They got to come out and do it. They got to write a report. And, it's not a big assignment for them. It is for the neighbors. I mean, these are, good suggestions.
I appreciate everybody in coming out this evening and expressing your concerns in what is most important to you as citizens of our beautiful city. And I've heard from today's meeting that there have been many significant concerns that changes and promises made by the apartment owner and manager will not actually be taken seriously or may actually be delayed, possibly maliciously for whatever reason. And the zoning change from MF to PD, multifamily to planned development, will actually give the city of Kennedale more power and legality to make sure that the regulations and codes are followed, and will actually give the city a power to make enforcements, including punishments, and make it illegal if codes are actually broken. And the zoning change will allow the city to actually fine and punish the apartment complex if they do end up not following any regulations. And in addition, the apartment complex also gave us a list of items that they were addressing. And a bunch of these items, they're either in progress, resolved, or they are not taken into consideration. For example, some of the important issues brought up by y'all include the misplacement of dumpsters. And with the zoning change, this will actually regulate, instead of having multiple dumpsters like 2 or 3, it'll reduce it to 1. And the zoning change will allow the city to enforce the dumpsters to be put in proper private locations away from the neighborhood. And the zoning change will also make sure that the locations of the dumpsters aligns with the city plans to make sure that everything is in order. And I've also reviewed the list, and with the zoning change, it will actually make it illegal to have any multi-level parking structures, like, say, any parking garages. And the zoning change will also give the city authority to actually fine the apartment complex if they don't follow these rules and regulations for any reason. And in addition, like how the owner and manager mentioned, the zoning change will will actually require them to have an annual meeting with the homeowners association and any property management of the neighborhood that y'all represent for any discussions that y'all may have regarding the apartment and anything that the apartment does. And in addition, the zoning change will also make sure that any commercial vehicles, say Amazon or eBay trucks, that they can't be parked overnight, and that anybody who tries to park there overnight, there are signs that have been posted or will be posted that their cars or vans or trucks will be towed. And I've also noted several items on the list that the apartment complex is stating that these items are in progress or they will achieve. And one of them is that the apartment complex will grant up to $1,200 actually for each tree that the resident plants in their backyard, but the residents must provide receipts. And other notable things that I saw that the apartment complex will do that are in progress include removing any barbed wiring and adding a drainage pipe to improve flow and reduce any erosion, and enforce no parking on Joplin Street. And there's actually a signage on signposts on the street that read that parking is not allowed and that the street is strictly for driving only. And the apartment complex has also written to us that any plans for any carports, so that's any covered like parking, it's like a mini garage without the actual garage door, that they won't actually build that. And the apartment complex has also written to us that they said that they won't build any more new apartments. So what is currently there, that's it, and they won't make any significant changes to the apartments as well. And I personally reviewed all of the code and all the information, the documentation that the apartment complex has granted to us. And I personally did not see any possible loopholes or any possible, maybe any apparent loopholes that the zoning change could allow the apartment complex to do if the zoning change were to be made. And yeah, I see concerns of why the apartment complex would choose to make the zoning change when they are the ones who built the apartment complex. And the owner manager, he has expressed to us that the zoning change will actually allow them to make these changes, which have been delayed for so long and causing a lot of stress and anxiety. And the zoning change will, see, based on my review, they'll actually stop delays and allow the city, grant the city power to oversee and enforce any changes so that the code is actually being followed. And of course, I want to request the apartment complex to, if they have, like, I see that the letter, the formal letter, because a gentleman in the audience, they expressed that they want to see any written, like, promises by the apartment complex and any explanations as to why they want the zoning change. And I see that this letter has been addressed to the commission, to neighbors, and to the staff of the city as well. But I request that the letter, in addition to a list of any changes that are in progress or have been made, to be resent out and made easier to be accessible to the neighbors who live close by the apartment complex. And in the list of things that are in progress or resolved, to actually give a more concrete.
It's on the website. We created a website and did a QR code on the property. So all the documents we've had are on so people can see them, but we also handed them out to everybody tonight too. But if we come back, probably the letter will be revised because there'll be it include the lender letter too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was just requesting that.
You do it.
More specific dates
A lot
will
of this
be
is
added.
going to be part of a legal review. So, of course, our staff and our city council is going to have to get together with our city legal, or city council legal, And they're going to have to decide how they're going to hammer out the different, shall I say, the rules and legalities and adapt in the UDC to make sure that they are compliant with that. So, I mean, I'm good on, yeah, this, if this needs to be put out and if this is out there on your website, then we may want to go ahead and put on our website a link to this.
I'm
That's,
happy to live by it. That's why I put
Yeah,
it into
that's-
the public record.
that's really no kind of here and there on the zoning.
Oh, yeah. So I just want to see like the list be made more, I guess, citizen-friendly, more concrete dates. Like, for example, you mentioned a replacement tree fund of up to $1,200. So maybe say, as an example, like in 1 week, this will be done, like just an example, or maybe
We've said that for months. We haven't anybody take us up on it, but each homeowner that's adjacent to us will reimburse up to $1,200 if they plant trees on their property. We don't care what kind or, I mean, so they could do that now. I mean, we would do it. So, it's just a matter of finding but we can provide some dates. Some of those things, it's hard to know, like when the fence might be done by, but the PD, that's why we're happy to put in there, it has to be done by X date. We're sort of guessing, but we have contractors, we've identified and have bids on all these things. It's just a matter of getting people out to do the work and being able to pay to do the work.
Have you done a Gantt chart on any of this to establish a timeline?
No, because we don't, I mean, we haven't, you gotta get in line. Well, there's a bunch of different vendors we're dealing with. And it's sort of, until we get an ordinance and the lender gives us the money, the contractor doesn't want to start. I mean, I know that's an excuse, but that's just what it is. I mean, if we come back next time, we could give you an anticipated date of when people could start the work. Everything after that's a guess, rain, I mean, we would guess at it, but all these things could easily be done by the end of the year. Some of them can be done much faster than that. I mean, we planted 7 trees. I thought I said 5, but I think we planted 7 trees last week because they had died or whatever. We went and when we did our field inspection, we saw that and we got out there and got them done.
Yeah, so any concrete dates as like linking the proposed changes would be nice, even if it's just like a time range. And in addition to Ms. Anita's request for another formal letter from regarding the discussion about how the zoning change would actually allow the lenders to grant money for all these changes to be made, that would also be very nice.
Yes, we will definitely do that because I think they're the one that is driving this. I mean, that's why we got hired to fix it, is because the lender is insisting on it.
So I don't really have any very many comments that haven't already been said. Kevin did a very detailed analysis of a lot of my concerns that I would have. I look at the PD and I see that this is the best option in a bad situation.
Totally right.
And this is the best way that we can bridge the gap. And I like the fact that you've been working so closely with the homeowners in the surrounding areas, listening to their concerns, and making those efforts to get to that point. We did have the comment about how is it legally enforceable, and then the way that it's legally enforceable is through a PD. The fact that you added to the PD outline that we can have fines and fees assessed for any of the violations is great. I would like to see a timeline in there, an estimated timeline as to when all of these projects could be completed. I understand there's kind of some unknowns at this moment in time because there's pieces that need to happen before you can move forward on certain things.
I think that's doable. I mean, like, if you guys, looks like your will is to hold it, so that means it'd come back the 4th Thursday in August, and then it'd go to council, whatever it is, in September. You get an ordinance passed. I mean, we could come up with a, like one of your colleagues said, a range of when work can be completed. And we'd still probably, because we promised, we'll probably still go out there and do some of the things that are reasonable and we can afford to do. I mean, the dumpster thing's inexpensive. The drainage thing's a pretty expensive item. I mean, some of these are, the less expensive things are easier to do than the more expensive ones. I mean, you know, kind of common sense.
So, and then the other thing that we haven't really talked about is that you representing this developer, y'all are working with the neighbors. Even though under the current zoning situation, you don't have to work with the neighbors, right? You're legally non-conforming. But if this property ever gets sold, we can't say that that's going to happen with the next owner. But with PD in place, that new owner would still be subject to everything that has been agreed to under this PD.
One caveat to that, you know, Wood was a client before I was at Master Plan. They were my dad's client originally in the 90s, you know. This is I mean, I have to go to the well with them in other communities. We've got 2 other things we're getting ready to start. And one of the reasons they've been so easy to represent and we've been successful for them where some other multifamily people we haven't is you call Richardson or Dallas or wherever it is, people will say, they do what they say, they keep their asset up, you can call them on the telephone and talk to the same people you dealt with. So while you're right, I don't have to do this because we're legally non-conforming, I kind of do. And to be honest, the neighbors are right. Like, I mean, and I have tried to consistently say that. They've been super nice. I mean, and they at least told me what we need to do and when it needs to get done and why they're mad about it. Understanding all those things has helped. I'm sure they're tired of dealing with me, you know. But I do think we're getting to resolution. Resolution is, not, you know, compromise is often everybody's a little bit unhappy together. And Wood's not, though, and Master Plan's not. We think people have dealt fairly with us, whether they're appointed officials, the elected officials have come to meetings. They don't do that in most communities. This has generally been a good engagement in what you said, the best option in a bad situation. That's exactly where we are. So I'm happy to keep working with them. I mean, most of the suggestions they've made are reasonable and appropriate, and in some cases even affordable. They have not picked the most expensive, you know, severe thing. They've treated our wallet like their own. That's nice. So that being said, we do have to, because that's why they've done projects all over the Metroplex and have been well received in almost every case. They don't lose very often. I don't think we have ever with you guys, knock on wood. But that's because we are going to be neighbors, either happily or unhappily. I would much rather do the Robert Frost, good fences make good neighbors, and move on at a point like, okay, it's palatable and we know what the rules are. Let's start over and try and have some reconciliation. That's been my goal from the beginning. And sometimes it just takes longer than you think. That's okay.
Right. So thank you for working with the neighbors and working so diligently to come to a resolution. And not every developer we deal with.
This is what I think zoning should be about is, you know, the hearing brings about both parties making compromises, and that's what it works. It doesn't, I don't see this as an adversarial process. When we represent cities on area plans or comp plans, we try to create this situation, and people need to vent about what they want. My goal is to always write conditions that are okay with my client and easy for the city to referee and maybe address citizen concerns. When you stitch all those things together, some zoning cases are pretty easy. I mean, that one I showed you, that Wood Partners, I know that's a super awesome building, real hard zoning case, lots of neighbors, you know. But we got it done, and I would say that's not any different than this. It's a great asset, but this is too. This is the highest tax thing in the city. I know it's not well received. I'd argue you need more highly taxed things in Kennedale to take the burden off of the single-family homeowner. I think we're part of that situation, and we're happy to set the bar real high that if you want to come here, whether you're a restaurant, and I've heard from neighbors and have filed away with our restaurant clients, this is a community that would support you. I mean, you seem goods and services interest citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you. No? Can I go sit down? I don't have to, but.
If you like to, Nathan, I got one question for you, sir. We were talking about city legal intervention on redrafting some sort of a punitive on this. What timeline would that look to happen if this goes on towards city council?
Let me make sure I understand correctly. So you're talking about a timeline for the items that they said they would get resolved, or?
Now, as far as the city's concerned, oversight, if you will, and then we were talking about the actual punitive side of it, for
Sure.
example. You know,
Good
so
question.
that's not exactly.
I understand now.
How long are we looking at when we go to legal to discuss that with the mayor, with the city council?
The ordinance will actually stipulate on when it has to be done by. So normally ordinances will have a time frame, has to be done within 90 days, 180 days, something of that nature, to come into compliance with that ordinance. And that's something that we probably look to include in that legal language. I will say this, that when it comes to the other asks as far as the lender letter and the scheduling, the hard dates and whatnot, as a recommending body, I've taken note of that. It will reflect that in the minutes. And then our staff report to council, we can ensure that, hey, these are the recommendations that planning and zoning had, and this is the result of it. This is what they've provided. I would ask that the Planning and Zoning Commission take a vote tonight, take action on this item. We have public notice the council meeting when this is supposed to go to council. If the Wood Partners wants to postpone that particular meeting, just like before, they'll just send me an email. Hey, we need some time to get that done before we go to city council, and we can have that at the next meeting, which will probably be September. But I would ask, we've done a lot of work up to get to this point, and we'd like to see some action taken tonight.
Yeah, I understand that. I do want to make sure we have transparency to the residents that are, do that transparency, as well as now we kind of did a discovery, found that, a lot of it is tied to a lender. So if we have proof of that, I think that's going to also help the situation quite a bit, especially when it goes to city council. So that's my opinion. I don't have anything further. Anybody else?
I do. So it was mentioned that Woods wasn't the original owner, or was the original that started this process. I would like to see some of that as well, just because president to me helps me make a decision based on what was done in the past and how we got to this point.
Okay.
That part was confusing to me at one point, just because I'm like, okay, we're all kind of blaming each other. Nobody was here. I want to see how we got there.
So look, I can speak to that. So the property was developed by a group called Vaquero, and they develop a lot of property all over the DFW. I believe they're based in Fort Worth. They developed this particular property, that, and then the adjacent where you see the O'Reillys, the car wash, the new Chipotle, right, that's coming in, the Popeyes. They developed that all as an urban village concept to have the residential adjacent to the commercial. And so they're the ones that did the zoning change. Now, I would argue that at that time, they probably should have gone to a planned development to begin with, but it was rezoned from the zoning that it had, which was a residential zoning, to a multifamily at the time. And that sets the standard on what the rules were at that time. And so they, of course, as developers, Vaquero goes and they shop that out. Okay, hey, we've got the zoning change. Who can we bring in to actually build this? And so they bought into that project. So that's how that genesis started. So it was a different person that was involved in the concept plan, the development, and the zoning changes, and it wasn't Wood Partners. They're the ones that bought it and inherited everything that came with that. So I hope that answered that.
One thing in your timeline I think that's important is, so Vaquero, and I think Weitzman was involved at one time too, they did the zoning case. And just like they sold the Chipotle piece and developed those. Wood bought their multifamily part. They did not close on it until they got the building permit. Does that make sense? So that was their assurance. Most builders don't want to, if they don't do the zoning themselves, they want that building permit before they close on it. So I think that's a key element here is that they relied on Vaquero zoning, and they relied on the city and their architect or whoever to submit the plans. They became the owner once they had the building permit to move forward. And they built what they had a permit to build. That's why they're legally non-conforming. I had to go back. We went back and listened to the old tapes to figure out how we got into that mess. So I see where you're going, because I had to do all this same thing. And we did a timeline at one point in the office to understand how this came to be. Does that help? Okay.
Does.
All right, any further discussion from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, are we allowed to, say, delay the vote until maybe a formal letter is drafted by the apartment complex and do and call for a special meeting by the commission to hold a vote, say, in 5 to 7 days?
Not particularly. What we can do, I mean, you can always make a motion to table to the next session. I don't know about a special meeting request. I mean, that's a motion, but again, it's voted on a part of the commission here.
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you what I think, and this is what I think. It's not part of your vote. To me, this is something with this type of letter, whatnot, is something that really needs to be massaged in with the residents. If that's something that we can say as part of the package conditionally to say, if we was to, at this point, recommend it, contingent on such action, and of course also being involved with the city council, we can definitely do that. And that package would go up to the city council for their actual approval. So just keep in mind, we're recommending body, not necessarily approval body.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, what are your thoughts about implementing, say, a recommended timeline for them to draft a new formal letter to give to the residents? Say,
Well,
like 5 to
again,
7
that would
days?
be one of those on their ability to do so. I'm sure they've got something going with their residents. That would be probably something between HOA president working in hand with the developer. I don't know, what kind of timeline do you think you would need for something like that? I mean, we're looking at, 3-4 weeks anyway before we hit city council.
One of my dad, who's, I don't know, my dad served on Dallas Council from 65 to 80 and saw a lot of zoning cases, then did hundreds of them here. He taught us a long time ago, in zoning, you can do it fast or you can do it right, and rarely can you do both of them at the same time. So and this is probably not in my client's best interest, but it is because we need to win. Doing this the right way and being as transparent with the neighbors. That's why we did the website and had all the meetings. It's like, we don't want to hide the ball at all. Doing it right and getting that letter, probably just returning at your next meeting in August, it's going to take, I don't think a special meeting, it's going to take us 2 or 3 weeks to explain this to them and have their attorneys look at it and all that. But I think we're on to something that will be helpful. We can address the timeline with the chart too by getting vendors lined up and getting a lot more of this like concrete so that when we return, people have like dates and they have the lender letter. I wrote down, we could add that HUD condition. I don't know, there were 2 or 3 other changes I heard that could be easily done. So, I think I don't think by y'all passing it tonight, we're gonna get any done with the city council any faster, because they're still gonna be waiting on that lender letter too. I would love for you guys, in a perfect world, I'd love a unanimous recommendation, and if it takes the lender letter to make everybody feel good, we will produce it in as timely a fashion, make it easier, and in the meantime, maybe we can do some of the improvements that we can afford to do that build ongoing confidence with neighbors, and they show up and they're slightly less angry with me.
Would you, if this,
like being married.
with that information, would you consider withdrawing this motion until the next meeting on your own?
I'd be happy if you guys just table it and just, don't make a decision tonight and table it and bring it back next time.
Okay, is that something that you feel comfortable with and confident with?
The 4th Thursday in August, right?
Yeah, 22nd.
Okay, yes. I can't swear I'll be here. My daughter's going to college, my oldest, so you may get somebody else, but, I want to stay married and my daughter loves me. Those are both tricky things.
So I'll ask this in a different way. Are you, at this point, you wanting to withdraw?
I don't know.
vote
I,
on
I
it?
really just want to be tabled. I don't want to withdraw. I just think
I mean, just for this particular meeting to be
Yeah,
applied.
yeah, I don't think we need a decision tonight. I feel like we made progress, and that's what zoning is. I mean, and, I think the Linder letter was a good suggestion. I mean, I'd love for y'all to vote yes tonight, but I feel like if you did, you'd just be voting yes with a requirement that we have the Linder letter. And so we still can't get scheduled for council, so it's the same difference, except that there's less transparency with citizens. And that hurts me in this instance because I need the most we can because of hurt feelings and lack of confidence in what happened before. So speed is not my angel tonight.
Understood.
I motion to table.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of motion to table to next meeting? He second, yeah. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we've got one opposed over, did you abstain or you didn't raise your hand? Oh, I'm just saying you didn't raise your hand. Okay.
Yeah, she voted.
Okay. So we have one nay, remainder of, so this does pass to table to the next session. All right. I'm gonna let the crowd clear out real quick and we'll move on to the next case. Break here for anybody that needs to use the restroom or whatnot. Out.
Case, next one.
Yeah, that one was closed actually at 8:15. We're going to reconvene here at 8:19.
You got a gavel?
Yeah. All right, guys. Next item on public hearings is going to be PZ case 24-11 to conduct a public hearing and consider a proposed zoning change from AG agricultural district to a PD planned development residential for approximately 19.4 acres for lot 7A, lot 76B as in Bravo, lot 7A 1, lot 7, or excuse me, gosh, I'm saying sevens. 6B1, 6A1, lot 6C1 of estates of J.M. Home Tracts Edition located at 1102, 1106, 1108, and 1110 Kennedale Sublet, approximately 3.06 acres of Block 1, Lot 11A and 11B of Oliver Acres subdivision located at 305 Collett Sublet Road, Kennedale, Tarrant County, Texas 76060. That is a mouthful, folks. I'm going to go ahead and open this again for a public discussion. Do we have any speakers, ma'am?
We do. Can you call the time on the public
I
hearing?
will. That is going to be at 8:20.
Thank you, sir. We do have two that wanted to register as the opposition for the item, that they do not want to speak. That is Mr. Anthron Pulliam of 1316 Tucker Lane and Miss Joycine Williams at 1320 Tucker Lane. The first speaker is Carrie Crawley. You're good? Okay. Second is Diane Wilson. Ms. Wilson is not here at this time. Mr. James Connor.
James Conner, 501 West 3rd Street, Kennedale, Texas. How are y'all doing tonight? It's been a long meeting. I'm going to try to be brief on this one. This area I've railed against for quite a while now. Reason is because I have USGS surveys that show that there are underground tributaries there. I have photos showing the last big rain event. Water stood in Mr. McLeland's backyard on one of those ponds for almost 2 weeks before it finally drained out. So it's going to cause nothing but flooding problems, no matter what you say. Jeff East from the USGS sent me an email, and basically he states that this is not a good thing. Basically, we're getting hit twice. Once with the addition of impervious space, and then again with the loss of storage of the retention provided by the ponds that will be removed and filled. So a proper hydraulic model will be needed. Back at the last public hearing for Magnolia Hills Phase 1, one of the people who is giving their land and is getting a buyout, Mr. McLeland, he didn't oppose Magnolia Hills, but opposed to small houses, which this is what this is going to be essentially. And he stated, and I quote, "There is little country and space between houses in the city. Traffic of 200 plus more will create more concern during school hours. We'll have drainage to the pond and would like written proof that the development will not change that drainage to his property. Prefer the open space, able to see other than rooftops, like to have space and address the nature." But now it's okay because he's getting money. That's another thing. Also, J.M. Lilly is the tract of land that it will be on. J.M. Lilly has Village Creek running through it. Village Creek is part of the Trinity River Authority. It was both addressed in the 2012 HAF report. That report is in the city manager's office. It is available for anyone to read. It's a binder about this thick. It's a really good read. I do really, you should read it because it addresses a lot of the flooding concerns, because back in 2010, this city did flood. That's why that city council commissioned that report. And in that report, it says another rain event of that magnitude will flood the city again. So adding more impervious space to that area is detriment to the people who would be living there and the people in Magnolia Hills. So, and also the people in the vineyards and also people that live over off of Kevin Miller, because it's also known as Murray Hill. Murray Hill has an elevation change that slopes down. So there's that. Also, with that being stated, it was also mentioned in the 2011 Lake Arlington Master Plan and about stormwater runoff, volume reduction, and pollution control matters. And the LAMP, which is the Lake Arlington Master Plan, recommends an established enforcement and periodic review of multiple ordinances, including impervious space. Also, one last point to make, because I know my time is out and running slow. This is the U.S. Geological Survey. As you can see, this blue line that leads to these two ponds right here, whether they were built by them or not, shows the importance of runoff in this area. Magnolia Hills put in a huge culvert there that runs directly to these ponds. If these are covered and filled up, where's that runoff going to go? That's right. It's going to flood the new houses. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, sir. Any more?
Mr. Eric Elam?
Same guys up earlier. It's already on recording. Okay, me and James are going to disagree this time around. I'm in favor of this because they're not messing with the water flow. They're going to, from my understanding, they're going to work within the existing ponds and everything else. They've already worked with the neighbors with the existing ponds. The neighbors with those ponds are already in agreement with it, from what I understand. Also, the reason I like this, because we're needing a new bridge over the railroad track. That's taxes. I'm big on getting some money coming into the city. Either we can have bond elections and existing homeowners can pay that money, or we bring in some more homeowners to help us pay for it. So these homes, who cares if they're 2 feet apart? If the people buy them and want 2 feet apart, let them do it. If it's 50 feet apart, they buy them, live them, let them do it. Another thing is, James is correct about what he said, and I was against the previous contractor, like I said, but like I said, on this one here, the neighbors are more adapt to it. Also, with the last one, they were going to try to cut through Magnolia Hills to connect this new neighborhood, the existing Magnolia. These people are going to put in an actual road going in because a new landowner has stepped up and supposed to be selling to them, and now they're going to be able to put a road right into Sublet. So, and it's already going into a island cut and everything. It's not going to mess up the city stuff, and it won't have to go through Magnolia even during the construction. So if people are against it because they think they're going to get all this traffic construction through the property, that's not going to happen so much because they're putting a road in, a main road to it. So I'm for it. God bless.
Thank you, Eric.
I do not have any more.
All right, at this time, I'm going to bring up some written requests to emails or statements that have been submitted by some of the adjacent folks wanted to have these written. I'm going to bear in mind I will be reading these out. However, they do not reflect any kind of no kind of opinion for the city or us as a body up here as well. These are strictly from those that wrote in to us. So the first one is, I'm going to read these verbatim. My name is Tilly Perry. I live at 1300 McClellan Court. Thank you, P&Z Committee, for allowing me to speak in regard to proposed plan for the enclave development. My concerns for this PD development are submitted to the city and are as follows. Why is this PD instead of a single-family home request? Second, the drainage flow from stormwater of Magnolia Hills, the vineyards, and 2 ponds that exist on the property are being sold. I ask that the larger of the 2 ponds be added to the plan to prevent further flooding from myself, my neighbors, and other Kennedale residents down the creek to the north side of the vineyard subdivision. Item 2, I appreciate the main entrance and the exit off of Kennedale Sublet, but would request further action in the design to be taken to reduce any more traffic down the 20-foot wide streets of Levy and McClellan. Item 3, construction traffic through Magnolia Hills and the vineyards. With the 25-foot roads, current roads are cracking and damage has already been done to the roads of Magnolia Hills. I would ask that a mandate or an ordinance be put in place to prevent further damage and safety issues to the current residents. I ask that the gates to the vineyards and Magnolia Hills be closed until completion of this project. Item 4, I ask that the upfront cost of the city, I ask what the upfront cost to the city is for this development. I understand that in 3 to 5 years, the city will start receiving property taxes on the development land, but ask to know what the city costs for the infrastructure, parentheses, roads, sidewalks, plumbing, will cost, excuse me, I'm got a frog, will cost and how long would the city to recoup these costs? To make it clear, I am not against the housing development, but do not like this initial plan presented and truly feel that there should be a few changes that will be better for the current and future residents of the city. End statement. Second one, this is from Betty Ursley. I'm going to probably slaughter some names, so I do apologize. This is asking to be read following comments at tonight's P&Z meeting. Considerance for the proposal of the enclave. Has hydraulic report been prepared in order to understand the concerns of drainage issues affecting the multiple neighborhoods? Concerns for sewer lines that are already clay handling additional flow from the proposed development. Additional cost for police and fire protection with new residents. Additional traffic, especially when entering roundabouts in the towards Kennedale High School. Added expense to the city to maintain roads. Additional crime, what happened in Magnolia Hills during construction. Proposed development should be zoned SF R4 versus PD, trying to avoid the UDC requirements. End of statement. This one is from Lauren Grothy. Sorry. Good evening. I am writing to express my strong opposition to the proposed zoning change for the land adjacent to Magnolia Hills. The concerns I wish to highlight encompass several critical issues that could significantly impact the well-being and safety of the current residents. Thank you. Somebody brought me water for my frog to swim in. All right. So back to it. The concerns I wish to highlight encompass several critical issues that can significantly impact the well-being and safety of the current residents of Magnolia Hills and other residents of Kennedale. Firstly, construction, traffic, and safety hazard associated with the proposed development are a huge concern. Construction activities such as operation of heavy machinery, excavation, and building operations will not only disrupt the tranquility of our neighborhood, but pose potential safety risks to pedestrians, children, and pets who frequent our streets. Our streets are narrow to begin with and cannot support the current residents in the addition to the large construction machinery. Damage will undoubtedly occur to the existing streets, curbs, vehicles, and other property. Our neighborhood should not have to support the burdens of this that comes with this construction. Secondly, the proposed neighborhood would inevitably lead to increased traffic already in congested streets. These communities, small streets, are ill-equipped to handle additional traffic volumes without exacerbating current issues such as gridlock directly outside the neighborhood on Sublette Road, difficulty in emergency vehicle access, and compromised pedestrian safety. The increase in traffic should not only diminish the quality of life for the residents, but also pose a hazard to public safety. Thirdly, the presence of several ponds on the land earmarked for development are particularly worrisome due to the tendency of flood. Only living in this area for a few years, I am aware of multiple instances where these ponds have overflowed during heavy rains, leading to localized flooding and property damage. These proposed developments fail to adequately address these flood risks, propose potential threats on both new residents and existing homeowners in adjacent areas. In light of these concerns, I urge you to reject the proposed zoning change. I trust that you will make those decisions and uphold the best interests of our community. Thank you for your consideration. There are several emails that were sent to different individuals, so I'm going to read it once at that point. Same with this one right here. This one was from Lee and Lynn Verheyden. It was sent to, let's see, several members of City Council. My wife and I are residents of Magnolia Hills community. We have some concerns about the proposed enclave development, which would be located directly west of our subdivision. We are mostly concerned about our safety. We want to ensure that construction vehicles are not gaining access to the enclave development via our subdivision. We feel that the builders should keep off of the community streets, i.e. McClellan, Levy, and Coleb Sublet during the duration of the construction. We, as well as many of the residents in our community, lived through a couple of years of construction and after we purchased our homes. We do not want to compete with the construction vehicles when using our streets. The area being proposed to the enclave development has 3 ponds which fill up during extended periods of rain. We would like to know how this drainage would be handled. We are concerned about the environmental impact of the proposed development. We feel strongly that the area proposed for the enclave development be zoned for single-family housing. We would like, okay, should be zoned, okay, that makes sense. We would like to have this message read at the oncoming, and this would be from Lee and Liz Verheyden. Again, sent to the City Council, a few members, and the City Manager. This one is from Daniel and Christina Fowler of 1356 Sublet Road in Kennedale. To the Planning and Zoning Commission, as residents of the City of Kennedale, we see that the community comprised of hardworking professionals in diverse fields, comprised of hardworking professionals and in diverse fields of engineering and education, financial management, military backgrounds, young families, retirees, just to name a few. We ultimately want the best for the City of Kennedale and its future residents. We feel it's important to note that this small community was established in 1887, had no storm drains, has existing erosion problems, and most of us pay the City of Arlington for our water. We understand that the business of home development is a profit motive, which is why we would like to state our strongest objection to the planning of the enclave located west of the Magnolia Hills subdivision of Kennedale Sublet Road. Currently, it is a wild green space that is thriving. It has multiple water resources and numerous protected wildlife such as the Canadian geese, mallards, cranes, red-tailed hawks, bluebirds, coyotes, fish, turtles, and more. It would be a huge loss for the community and its appeal if this was developed. The construction of the 95 dwellings would fundamentally change the land from a greenery sanctuary and habitat to one of residential use. Additionally, the enclave plan development packet does not address major issues to the main concern of the community. The following, therefore, should be considered and the questions answered. Effect on drainage. There is a known flooding problem in the area that has been linked back to the area surrounding the land. From our understanding, the exact reason of the previous developer decided to abandon the building on this land. The planning package does not address this, nor does the additional expenditure need to cope with the new construction. The land currently offers the advantage of retaining rainwater. If developed, this would be lost. The other concern is the current proposal that shows roughly 9 lots that would be built directly on top of what standing water year-round due to the being geographically the lowest point of the area. The last thing we want is for a builder to come in, develop homes on unsafe eroding lands, and leave the homeowners to deal with flooding issues once the developer is gone. Nor do we want the water that resides there to be displaced into Magnolia Hills. We want to mitigate these issues that would potentially affect our home values, not to mention lead to the consumer class actions against the developer and builder, given that these issues are well known beforehand. We have the following questions. Question 1, do the calculations for rainwater accumulation mitigation take account the increasing strength and frequency of very heavy rainfall? Question 2, is there a settlement period for the areas that are currently underwater in which the home or plans to be built on? And question 3, Can you ensure these lots will have the proper land foundation required to mitigate natural settlement and the erosion that will occur over the time? Another area is safety issues due to the increase of traffic. The planning packet was silent on the traffic proceedings during the construction phase of the enclave. Traffic flow and proper designated parking, should the enforcement as in construction worker vehicles and additional more homeowners will create a bottleneck around the Cullet Sublet Road area, Levy Lane, and the McCullen Court. It is our experience when there are construction workers coming into the community, there is a rise in crime and an increase in dangerous traffic. The entrance to McCullen Court and Levy Lane from Cullet Sublet Road must have signs that display no through traffic for construction during the entire phase, enforced by the Kennedale Police. We have the following questions. Question 1, will a design construction interest be used for the worker vehicles and will it be enforced? Question 2, how will safety be ensured for Magnolia Hills residents? Conclusion. In summary, we had to ask one question of why the previous builder decided not to build on this land. To speak frankly, we have significant concerns regarding both the development itself and the potential impact on the well-being and surrounding area, including those of our own home and future residents. Although we understand the need for development and progress, it should not compromise neighborhood aesthetic appeal and investment value to jeopardize safety and well-being. The proposed development as it stands does not address the issues and should not be endorsed. Respectfully, Daniel and Christina Fowler. All right, this one is from Chris Albee. I do not see an address on here, so we will continue. I am writing to express my concerns regarding the proposed construction plan adjacent to our neighborhood. While development and growth are essential, it is critical to address the potential safety issues and impacts on our community infrastructure before proceeding with this project. Infrastructure issues. One of the primary concerns of adequacy to our current infrastructure to support a multi-year construction project, the roads within our neighborhood, particularly those through Livy and McCullen Court, are not designed to handle the increased traffic and the heavy machinery that large-scale construction project would bring. The streets are narrow and lack the structural integrity needed to sustain prolonged use of construction vehicles. This raises several safety issues. 1, increased traffic and congestion. The allowance of traffic will likely lead to significant congestion, making it challenging for residents to commute and increase the risk of accident. 2, wear and tear on the roads. The constant use of heavy machinery will accelerate the deterioration of our streets, leading to costly repairs that the community may ultimately bear. Additionally, the reality of construction debris, such as nails, screws, etc., ending up on the roads would likely result in tire damage, increased vehicle maintenance, and cost for the residents. These are direct consequences of construction projects that impose unnecessary financial burdens on our community. 3, emergency access. Narrow and congested roads would impede the emergency vehicles' abilities to quickly and efficiently reach the residents in need. Road access through Magnolia Hills, MH. Proposed planning including using MH as a primary access route for the construction project. The street is currently not large enough to support such an undertaking. Increased construction traffic will pose a safety hazard for pedestrians, especially children who frequently play and travel along this road. Additionally, the noise and air pollution from the construction activities will negatively impact the quality of life for families living in the vicinity. Overflow pond and draining concerns. Another significant concern is the proposed relocation of an overflow pond. These ponds play a crucial role in our neighborhood's draining system, particularly along the back of Tucker Lane. Moving it without a comprehensive understanding of the drain impact could lead to flooding. Part 1, flooding. Alterations to the draining system might cause water to back up, leading to flooding in our homes and yards, and especially during heavy rainfall. 2, erosion. Improper drainage could result in soil erosion, damaged property, and potentially compromising the foundation of nearby homes. And 3, economic impact, which is the relocation of the pond may disrupt the local ecosystem, affecting wildlife and plant in the area. Land settlement and construction time. The history of the frequent overflows from these ponds raise concerns that the stability of the land designed for development. It is essential to determine the land settlement timeframe before construction can safely begin. This settlement period could significantly extend overall timeline from breaking ground to the full project completion. Rushing the process, without allowing adequate time for the land to settle could result in structural damage and increased long-term maintenance cost. Impact on families and community well-being. The construction project would undoubtedly have a profound impact on families residing in the neighborhood. We just came out of construction fatigue from the last MH being completed less than a year ago. The increased noise, pollution, disruption of daily routines can lead to stress and a decreased quality of life. It is imperative to consider these facts and explore alternative solutions that might mitigate these negative impacts. In light of these concerns, I urge the Planning Department of the city to conduct a thorough traffic and infrastructure impact study to assess the feasibility of the proposed access routes and construction plan. Develop a detailed drainage plan that addresses potential flooding and erosion issues leading from the relocation of the overflow ponds. 3, engage the community to discuss potential solutions and modifications to the construction plan that prioritize the safety and well-being of the citizens. Thank you for your consideration and these concerns. I look forward to hearing your response and hope we can work together to ensure the development proceeds in a manner that is safe and beneficial for all parties involved. Signed, Chris and Linda. That is to complete those statements. Like I said, mentioned, they are not the opinion of the city or the council here or this board. Nathan, it is up to you now, sir.
Just in time. Did a great job, by the way. The library just had an event where folks can volunteer to read to the kids, and I'm gonna sign you up next time. So, okay, we're here to talk about a zoning change from agriculture to a planned development. I want to be clear. Planned development in this case is a single-family residential project. Single-family residential planned development, not townhome, not multifamily. But I'll speak to some of those concerns that the residents have spoken to, but let me just give you a quick overview. We've talked with the developer for quite some time, and I'll be clear, this is not the same developer as before. This is called the Enclave. This is not Magnolia Hills Phase 2, which was simply like a 2-street addition of what's there today, and there wasn't any egress points or anything like that. This is it's gonna have its own identity, its own plan development, its own requirements. And so, the subject properties are currently residential home sites that are zoned agricultural districts. And the applicant actually has several of the properties that are adjacent under contract, and in addition to securing additional off-site easements to address drainage, which we've heard quite a bit here just a minute ago. The landowners themselves, they've attempted to sell this property before, but they've been unsuccessful due to unfavorable developments. So a major issue that residents in the previous council and had with the previous proposal is that it didn't include a second egress outlet onto Kennedale Sublet Road. And that was a concern, that without one, the new development would further increase traffic onto Cullet Sublet. And that's been a big complaint of Magnolia Hills, is that, cities have to rebuild the other side of Cullet Sublet, right? And we're doing that. So to be clear, applicant, developer, all new. This is called the Enclave, consists of 95 new single-family lots, and I'll tell you how that differs from what's existing in Magnolia Hills Phase 1 right now. So in working with the applicant, our early discussions were, man, this is what they said last time. These were the big concerns. And prior to this particular applicant, I've fielded calls for the last year and a half from folks, and those were the big asks. It's like, okay, well, what are your plans? Can you give me a secondary egress point on a Kennedale Sublet? Because that was a major issue before. Everybody said, no, nope, nope, nope. Okay, on to the next one. This one was actually successful in securing that. And so, hey, let's talk some more, right? What are your plans? So we talked about the conditions on Levy, hope I'm saying that right, McLennan, hope I'm saying that right, and Tucker, right? That the roads were built at the city standard at the time, but they are narrow. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I want to make sure I get my facts correct before I speak. But I believe that from curb to curb, it was 26 feet wide. So one of the issues that exists in Magnolia Hills Phase 1 is that if you park on both sides of that street, can't get a fire truck down there. And our staff, we've been trying to find out a reason or a solution to that that's not going to upset somebody. But on one side of the street, somebody's going to have to put some no parking signs, right? And so because we're stuck with the street that's met code, but if people park on the street, it's hard to get through. So that's another concern that we had, right? In this next phase, let's talk about the widths of the street. Can you do that? And so that's one of the other things that you'll notice in the concept plan. So the new proposed zoning change will now include a secondary egress onto Kennedale Sublet Road. It'll also tie into Sterling Drive, which is for the south, is in a neighborhood called the Vineyards there. So it's going to tie into that. That neighborhood has a stubbed out for future expansion, as does Magnolia Hills right now with Levy and McLennan, if I said that correctly. So the existing stubbed out streets will be connected to that. That's good planning practice when you put in a new phase. Can you tie into existing streets, right, to improve mobility, connectivity, give people different options to go about the city? Another concern I think we talked about here a minute ago was the streets were designed too narrow. This prohibited, again, emergency vehicles from going down the street. So that's what we talked about. So at the enclave, we have a secondary egress point, and we've asked for that in the plan development. Our streets, they're now wider. They're having a minimum of 31 feet from curb to curb. So that allows people to park on the street and still be able to get a fire truck down the road. So that's what's different than what's existing today. We've asked for street trees. So that was a discussion for Magnolia Hills Phase 1. Where are the street trees? Well, the plan development said you have to provide two trees in the front yard. And you can include the parkway as part of the front yard, but it didn't require it. So with this one, we've been talking about adding street trees. The sidewalks are different here as well. They also meander. Instead of just normal straight, they kind of give a little path through the neighborhood. And we've been talking with the developer that this will be a first in Kennedale, is that we talked about a sensory park. And we have some open green space within the development, but how can that best be utilized? And I thought, given our discussion with parks in town, hey, let's get something unique. And a sensory park would be unique to Kennedale. We don't have one in here. We don't have a lot of parks in Kennedale, but it would allow families that have kids with special needs that really choose to stay away from normal playgrounds because they're real busy, noisy. It would allow them to still get out with their family. Talking with residents, that's been a key point to people that say, hey, I've got family members that have these types of needs, and we can't take them down to the park in Arlington because it's just too wild. We want a quiet little spot. And so that's one of the, I think, a benefit of this particular project. So we've talked to them about that. We've included that within the plan development. Lastly, what's different is that the lot widths and the side yard setbacks have been increased. So a majority of the lots here within the enclave, one of the folks that wrote an email, when I reviewed it, they said, hey, we want minimum 60 feet wide homes. The majority of this development are 60 feet wide homes. So these lots are actually wider than what's existing today. And those setbacks range from 5 to 10 feet, whereas today they're just 5-foot setbacks, right? So we've been intentional in saying, hey, we need some. The complaint was there's so much congestion within Magnolia Hills. In my world, it's a fabulous development. It's what's there is normal in my world. 5-foot yards side setbacks is normal. What that means is that gives you 10 feet between the homes. Well, when you go into an existing neighborhood that's got a little bit more elbow room, 10 feet looks really, really small, right? But if you go to any development anywhere, that's how they're building lots today. We say, well, what can we do to so that the appearance doesn't seem so congested. And so we talked with the developer, hey, let's stagger the lots. So they have a variety of offerings. You'll see a 50-footer, which is normal, a 55-footer, which is wider than what's existing, 60-footer, and a 70-footer. And these have been staggered on purpose. A, B, some Cs mixed in. And what that means is on a 60-foot lot, you have a wider setback. We're going to require a wider setback because you got more room to play with. But when you put it next to a lot that's 50-foot wide with a 5-yard setback, now what we've done is we've still allowed the home to be built, but the perception is the homes they'll be further apart. So we still did that, and that was another sticking point, right? Can we do that? And that's what they've done in their concept plan, is they've staggered those type A, type Bs. And that's the important part of it too. So the wider setbacks have been provided in the enclave. That's to provide, again, more variety. You know, folks really don't like cookie cutter subdivisions, right? Where everything's uniform, everything's the same. It works for some people, but as a developer, they want variety because they can offer a variety of options to people. And so does the concept plan meet and the plan development meet what we currently have on the books? What's the adopted plan? And the answer is yes. It's consistent with our adopted plan. On our future land use plan right now, it's consistent with our comprehensive plan. It's also consistent with the future comprehensive plan that you'll hear later about tonight. So we were working along as that was going on to make sure any new development in the review and in the queue that's coming in is still consistent with what the conversation has been in town, and it is consistent with that. Again, those are some of the items that we've tried to address with this particular plan development. Wider setbacks, wider lots, egress points. I'm counting 4 in my head right now. Street trees, architectural standards, those are part of the plan development, which differ slightly from Magnolia Hills Phase 1. So again, this will have its own unique offering, we believe. So again, we found it consistent with our existing plans. We are recommending approval. I do want to speak to a couple items that were brought up, is that drainage. Drainage has been a big concern. And in a lot of our meetings that we've had with them, I've actually brought in our city engineer, our firm, and we've had a discussion about, hey, let's look at the vineyards, how things tie into those existing stock ponds, right? And we're gonna keep a real close eye on how drainage is affected, because we know that was brought up before, and as we heard tonight, it's still a concern for people. So, but what I heard was that it sounds like residents, they want someone to design, to study, and to engineer a system to improve drainage. So this zoning change starts that process. The zoning change comes first, and then we get into preliminary plat. Preliminary plat, a component of that is preliminary engineering, preliminary studies, preliminary utilities and drainage. All that gets reviewed. It's exhaustive. It's an exhaustive study. I can tell you because we have several projects that now we're nearing the end, and we've just gone through multiple rounds of review. So I want to just reassure everybody out there that we have heard the concerns about drainage. They do have a plan that they'll speak to mitigate that tonight. Also, construction traffic. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but there is no construction traffic that will be approved to go through Magnolia Hills Phase 1. I won't approve it. It's a traffic plan is going to be required. This new road tie into Kennedale Sublet, that will be the location that we're going to ask for a temporary, the construction entrance to go into the development. And so I want to reassure everybody that traffic congestion, the barricades, my plan is to see those barricades remain so there's no through traffic during the construction. As soon as all the civil engineering, the grading, all the drainage, everything like that, to where they're doing just individual lots, we'll look to see how we can make some improvements in that. But I want all the traffic to go through this new development, because it's not Magnolia Hills Phase 1. It's the enclave. And so it'll have its own construction entrance and to address any of those concerns that folks have. Also, the previous builder, I can't speak to them, I didn't work with them. I did speak to the folks that were wanting to develop when I come aboard, and I'll tell you, drainage wasn't why they walked away. Why they walked away, I'll be very clear. It's the headache. They didn't want to deal with planning and zoning at the time or the city council. They just had heard the rumors and they said, you know, we tried it before and it's just, we just don't want to do it. And so I have talked to multiple people that have that same sentiment. And I've talked to them, and some of those are actually coming back. You know, and I'll be honest, I've verbally been flipped the bird here in Kennedale, right? When we're talking about, hey, we'd like to see something built here, maybe a grocery store or something like, you know, something unique right in town. Like, oh, we didn't heard about how things happen, right? It's not worth our time, so we're going to walk away. That is changing, and again, if Kennedale can attract some high-end developers, which we believe we're at that area, we're at that point, then we can develop responsibly, consistent with our adopted plans that we have now and in the future plans. These additional homes, again, like we heard tonight, will require additional services, but they will also pay into that. So that's 95 new homes that will be added to the tax rolls, and that's certainly going to help our budget. We've been going through budget discussions already. We've got some choices to make, but if we add additional homes to that, it lessens the tax burden on everybody else, right? And now the city's got the funds it needs to provide the services that people expect to. When they move to Kennedale, they're moving from other communities, right? We heard earlier tonight that folks have moved from out of state. We also have folks move from other communities. But when they come here, there's a level of expectation for city services that we need to meet. So how do we meet that, right? So again, that kind of concludes my staff report. I'm hoping I addressed any concerns that folks have had. Happy to answer any questions that you have. We do have the applicant here with their representatives and their engineer to speak to any concerns that you have as well. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Nathaniel. Hey, I want to apologize ahead of time. There was another statement. It slipped through the cracks, but I want to make sure it's read, just like everybody else got the opportunity to make. This one is from Krista Lewis. It comes from 1312 Tucker Lane, excuse me, and her husband Garrison. We will be directly affiliated with the new development in our backyard is touching the area to be developed. We have a few main concerns and several sub-concerns that we will not have time to address tonight that we would like to have heard. Concern 1, drainage. We have neighborhood residents who have already experienced flooding in their homes due to the drainage issues on this land to be developed. We are concerned about 2 of the 3 ponds being filled in and being built on top, as well as issuing the land as land to be developed. Okay, so we're concerned about the water that would flow into these 3 ponds and now go only into 1 pond, typically being pushed downstream. Concern number 2, PD is a single-family home zoning. We feel like this developer is skirting around the UDC and filing for a PD instead of a single-family just to be able to add more homes into this narrow space. We have met with the developer and discussed why they chose the PD instead of single-family, but we don't think it's the wisest decision for our city. We think that the lots should be R3 and larger. In addition, the needs to be zoned for the single family, it is really to cover us because we have, have had times where the council and the city staffers have approved items that should not have been approved, and now this is causing issues, i.e. Alta Landing. The city has now been burned bad by zoning decisions in the past, and we should prevent this from happening again by zoning this as single family. What were to happen to this space should the developer pull out? Could it be developed into something else, like townhomes or apartments, if they did not follow through? Sorry. These reasons alone are why we think the zoning should be single family instead of PD. The items this developer are bringing to the table, 1 open space and pocket playground, parentheses, are not enough to warrant a PD zoning. Concern 3, we think the city should have approval on the builder that goes in there. The developer mentioned they did not have a builder yet. They also mentioned that D.R. Horton might be a potential builder. While we know the reputation of D.R. Horton has not been Okay, has, and gosh, sorry, this is really small for me to read. The developer mentioned that they don't have a builder. We all know the reputation of D.R. Horton has, and they shouldn't be an option. This is worrisome because we deserve to have quality builders in the area who are going to build quality, sturdy, and safe homes. Because of these reasons, we suggest the committee table this item until the developer can come back and the drainage issues identified, clearly addressed, and independent engineering report can be made public. The P&Z committee has time to discuss the idea with PD and single-family zoning, and the developer know who their builder is and has researched it and approved by the city. Thank you for your time and service to the city, Garrison and Krista Lewis. All right. Wanted to make sure that was read to include with the rest of the statements. I do apologize again for that. Did you have anything to add?
Just
based on that?
to reassure everyone, the planned development is strictly single family. So that's what's written into they can't do anything other than that, than what we've put in the single family. The ordinance will ensure that follows that, will ensure that that's all that is built there. We thought that this was a great candidate for a planned development. So within a planned development, it allows you, council, the staff, the developer to consider things that are outside the 4 boxes of zoning, of traditional zoning. We have discussions about open park spaces, things. We've had those types of discussions, so that's where we found the middle road in providing something unique. Certainly, I believe the developer will speak to it, that they're open to hearing what planning and zoning wants to see, what they would like to see, and then same thing with council, right? So it goes through a vetting process. Regarding drainage and engineering, again, the city at some point can only require certain studies at certain times, right? A developer, those things cost money. They're not going to expend money on something that we won't even allow, we won't even consider, right? So a zoning change starts that process for them to engage their engineers, and they've already got them on standby, but before they go any forward, they want to make sure that Kennedale, they want to hear from Kennedale, but I want to make sure that that we're okay, that Kennedale is okay with them moving forward. So with the zoning change, it would enable them to perform those studies, perform that engineering. And that's how development typically works, right? It's not a cart before the horse. We're not going to go spend, I don't expect them to spend all this money on engineering, come to the city and they vote it down, and they've just wasted money. So part of that is the zoning change, and then we've probably got about a year or 2 of review, platting, civil engineering review, things like that, before any dirt even gets moved on that. So that's typically how that process works. So I hope I've answered that. I'm happy to hand it over to the applicant to speak as well.
Let's see if I can find me. Where me? Oh, that may be me. I think. Nope, that's not me. Not me. That didn't look like me either. There he is. Slow mouse today. Carl Crawley, I think you have my address. So I won't go into that if that's okay. Nathan took my whole report and it's getting late, so I think I'll just get to some of the bigger things. This is the site. Y'all know where the site is. The Magnolia to the, I guess your right, Vineyards to the lower left. Comp plan, as Nathan said, it complies with the comp plan, today's comp plan, tomorrow's comp plan, unless it's revised, it all complies with that. Here we are, ag zoning. You can see the 2 neighboring neighborhoods, Magnolia Hills and the Vineyards, are both also PDs for single family, I'm assuming. So it seems to be, if you look around there, there's a lot of PDs for single family. I've been doing this for a long time, 30 plus years. PDs are as the previous case, it's an opportunity to put restrictions on the developer, and the developer can put them on himself in most cases, and that's what we've done in this case. There's the layout, and I think, I'm not gonna go down these bullet points except the last one down there. Construction access will only, I didn't use bold, but I at least use all caps, come from the new road or from Kennedale sublet. There's barricades on those streets that come into us. Nathan's not gonna let us, but even if he was gonna let us, we're not gonna remove those barricades until the city's accepted all of our improvements. The city doesn't want anyone driving on a road. The developer, the contractors don't want anyone driving on a road that's not accepted, because then they may be rebuilding the road, and that comes out of their pocket. So yes, we agree to that wholeheartedly. We don't want people that, there's liability issues, you understand, I'm not gonna get into that. The other issue that's really come up in the whole list of the emails that you read and the testimony, besides that construction, was drainage. I know enough about drainage it usually flows downhill, water, unless you pump it. Among other things, it flows downhill unless you pump it. But that's why I brought that guy. But as Nathan said, no, and we had a neighborhood meeting last night, and we explained to them, you could zone this and the city council could approve it. If the drainage solution costs $20 million to solve all the problems, you know what? You're gonna have a nice piece of vacant property that's zoned for this thing. We're not asking for any changes to drainage or anything else. We're gonna comply with what the city says, and I'm gonna let Dayton come up here and sort of explain how the drainage, is it gonna be perfect? Is there still gonna be issues? Well, if we have a 1,000-year flood, we're all in trouble. But it's gonna improve over what the complaints we had last night from some of the neighbors in the vineyard who have some issues. And a lot of that is cleaning up what's out there too. A lot of it is simple, let's get up and clean up the drainage that's out there now so it flows. But I'm gonna let Dayton, if you wanna come up and talk about hydraulics, and try not to put you all to sleep. Promise me you won't put them to sleep.
No, I promise. I do have a hard time with that. Everybody in my house sleeps very well. Dayton McAtee, 4144 North Central Expressway, Dallas. So I am the civil engineer for the project, and drainage has been mentioned over and over and over. And actually, that's what I harp with every client I have. Drainage is always super, super critical. In this case, it's really, I didn't get to go to the neighborhood meeting last night. I probably could have allayed some of the fears, but Kennedale has a detention ordinance. It says that when you develop a piece of property, the runoff that leaves the property after you've developed it cannot be greater than what it is today in its undeveloped state. And so I've already done some preliminary calculations. And as you can see, we've identified over on the property to the west, a large area to be our detention pond. And it's actually going to be a retention pond. The neighbor wants to keep it wet, so we're going to work with them and let it still be a wet pond that he can enjoy. But then we will build some structures and all that to actually allow it to hold the volume of water it needs to provide the detention that we need. So the people in Magnolia were worried that, I think they have it in their mind that we're going to just dump on them and flood. For the most part, the property, Magnolia actually dumps onto this property. And it basically, just in very rough terms, it goes from the white overlay there, it goes pretty much from the upper right to the lower left. It's just, that's the natural lay of the land. So everything ends up going down along a channel, a drainage way along the north side of the vineyards. There was a concern that, what are you going to do with all that water dumping on you from Magnolia out of that huge pipe? Well, it's my intent, and I've worked it out with the engineers that.
Let's see if the next slide might be better. That might help you. What do you think?
That's all right.
Either one.
That's, yeah.
No, that's it.
Okay. whatever, yeah. So the water that's coming out of Magnolia has already been detained. So they have a fully developed runoff going into that pond. And then the pipe that comes out of it only allows to flow what was there before it was developed. We are actually going to connect onto that and take it all the way through our development. And so it will not dump uncontrolled on our houses and flood streets and all that. So that's not going to be an issue. I forgot the name of the hill. Is it maybe Murray Hill, whatever is down to the south. So I'm fully aware of what's coming from that direction, and we're passing that through as well. It's undeveloped, so we're not going to detain it. It's going to just pass through. And then at the same time, we are going to detain our sites. So we've already given considerable thought to drainage issues. And like Carl said, assuming our PD is approved by City Council, then we start with drainage studies, all the engineering studies, the grading studies, and all that. And I think it's like he was exaggerating, but if there's a point where it's going to cost way too much to mitigate the drainage according to the city's current ordinance, then I'm sure it would be put on hold until somebody can afford to develop it. But my preliminary calculations show that it can be handled and it will be developed in a timely manner. And then just sort of to one little extra that kind of goes unnoticed, but is, as Nathan was saying, when you develop, there's an interconnectivity part. It's not really good to have a whole bunch of isolated developments that don't go anywhere else. And so that's why, so once we get this developed, we will open up the connections between Magnolia. We have a connection down at the vineyards. And if you'll notice, on this very south end, we've actually, we're stubbing a street to the east to allow that there is probably going to be a time in somebody's lifetime where that will be extended over, was it Colette, Sublet Road? It'll be very possibly be extended over there. Another aspect of the interconnectivity is within developments, you get sort of a closed utility loops, water and sewer and all that. And when you interconnect everything, it benefits it. If water pipes break, you get feeds from another direction and all that. So we are actually interconnecting vineyards, two places, Magnolia, up on Kennedale Sublet, and then we're extending that little extra piece there. So in my opinion, we're doing this, engineering it extremely responsibly, and I'll leave it to the planners to come up with all the pretty stuff. Like I said, I'm a boring guy. So let's see, I think. Oh, there was one other question, and I'm not sure if y'all caught this or not, but somebody was saying, just how much is this going to cost the city to do all this? And I can say without question, zero. This is totally going to be paid for by the person who develops these lots. And of course, they build that cost plus the land cost into the amount that they market the lots for. So there is no cost to the city. So.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is there any drainage on street level, going to be built into this particular one? Because I didn't see it in any of the proposals, and I'm sure that's one of the comments that were made in some of that reading. But no, like, connection from street side to sewage lines, like gutters, for an example?
Well, there will be storm sewer systems that collect all the rainwater, and everything from this development is going to dump into that gray rectangle up there at the top with the oval in it. That whole area is going to be a wet pond, and it'll, normally be down, like the neighbor was actually saying that over time, that his pond's been getting bigger and bigger and deeper, which he doesn't like. Well, I believe along the wall of vineyards, I think there's been like beaver dams and stuff built, so it's all backing up. And part of our efforts will be to clean that out, maintain it, and get it to where it flows properly again. It'll lower his pond back to its historical level, and then we'll create the detention volume in that area. But we'll have an underground pipe system and inlets and all that dump into it. Y'all still awake? Okay.
No, I remember, I believe I remember with the last developer, there was issues with some of the runoff that was coming from the vineyards. And so you're saying that kind of preliminary, what y'all think that might be beaver dams that are along that?
I don't know. I haven't heard of any problems with, I know that there was some issues with, well, in that corner lot, I think there was a little bit right there, but, and I think that was from water actually coming from the south, and we're gonna capture that and put it in a culvert and take it around the corner. But I think probably, somewhere around where it says open space, somewhere by the oval, somewhere in there, there's something that's unnaturally keeping that water level high right now. And so my first thought is it's either just lots of debris or, which is very possible. I don't think, I'm not sure that Paul, the neighbor, has ever maintained it. It's just in an area it's easy to forget. And now it's so mushy. I haven't even been in there. I think I'd need hip waders or something. It's really a mess down there, but we're going to clean that out and restore that whole area to where it flows properly.
Are y'all open? Yeah, thank you so much for all of your comments, sir. But are y'all open to larger lots for the newer homes and/or larger homes as well for the development?
No, I mean, right now these are, I think, the home sizes are pretty consistent. I want to say that, now Carl may have to answer this for me, but I think we actually have our minimum pad size and minimum house size is equal to or larger than Magnolia. So they are, pretty, they're commensurate with what the neighbor has. And, yeah, so I can't really I can't answer you definitively because it's not my project.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's no problem. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So I don't know who can answer this question, but it's about the acreage that I'm seeing we've got 3 different acreage sizes. So one, we're saying 19.4. The draft layout is saying 18.49. And then the PD is saying 20.47. Do we know why there's the deviations between those 3 items?
20.47, I can't answer the ones that are like about an acre or less, the 18-something and the 19-something. I'm pretty sure that the 20 included some additional land. If you look, there's kind of a block that says conveyance tract that looks like that's Oklahoma. The Panhandle of Oklahoma used to be 2 more lots in this, and we actually took them out, and that's not a part of the PD, so that would have driven it down a little bit.
Well, the PD is the highest at 20.47.
And I'm saying that was the number we had. Where's that printed?
So it's on the layout for the enclave plan development. In the very first paragraph, we've got 20.47 acres.
Okay, that makes sense because we changed it about 2/3 of the way through the process, and that's a typo. We just didn't change that.
Okay.
It's really more like the 19-something.
Okay, yeah, because in the layout of the lots, this blueprint, it's saying 95 lots being 18.49 acres of land.
That's probably what it is. I mean, there's just there's a typo.
I think And I think that includes additional 3 acres that are off a cullet sublet. And so that's probably where that.
The deviation's coming from.
discrepancy is. But the lot layouts, it's 95 lot layouts is what we've, what you see there.
Okay.
Yeah, we definitely have a very specific table saying what the sizes are and how many there are. I think the bulk of them are the 60-foot wide lots.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the board up here? Maybe you did put him to sleep, sir. Nothing, Kevin?
No further questions.
Okay. I don't know what to do. You know nothing. All right.
So I'll just kind of,
Go ahead.
I like this, I like the development. I think there needs to be something that goes here. I think residential is correct for what should be here. It's consistent with both of our, our existing plus where we're moving to. The developer has addressed issues and concerns from Magnolia Phase 2. The street widths and flooding and other things that they were concerned with. The traffic, I do remember with Magnolia Phase 2, they had at least gotten a construction entrance, but this is going to be a permanent entrance that can be utilized for construction, and it will be that permanent structure, entrance onto Colette Sublet, plus all of the other entrances to tying in the rest of the community. So I like all of that. I like the way that y'all have laid out the lots to where there's a mix of the lots. It's not, here's your section of 50s, here's your section of 60s, right? You normally see that in some of these planned developments, but to have that, the differentiation and the side setbacks, it's going to, I agree that it will give that visual appearance that we're not just building houses right on top of one another. But those are my comments on this.
I was just say, I think the biggest overall, I'm going to call it the discussion, if you will, from individuals, not only in here present today, but also the statements were, of course, dealing, first of all, with developmental, well, we're going to have to deal with that no matter where we are in the city. No matter where we are in any location, change is going to be a thing. Unfortunately, it does inconvenience some of us more than others, and that's something that, definitely is taken into consideration. The sizes of the homes, I'm seeing are consistent as our staff has looked out and developed. I do also have the same concern about the floodplain lines and the natural flow of the area. Of course, we're not going to necessarily know too much about that until studies are done, which is after the fact of even securing this zone change. So it's not anything that we're going to have to know. We can't delay it any further to say, let's find out. So it's not something that is going to know tonight. This is going to be a progressive thing. It's going to be an ongoing process. And in given time, it's just like the gentleman said here, it may be to the point where, hey, it's not feasible to develop the area and it may turn into something else. So that's something down in the future lines of understanding and kind of the way it goes in the world of real estate. So with that being said, does anybody else have any further comments on this one? I don't want to jump on anybody.
No, I believe you touched point on my concerns as well.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'd go ahead and like to take a motion to vote on this requirement, which I'm not going to read the whole thing again, but PZ case 2411 for the enclave development here in Kennedale, Texas, Tarrant County, and 76060. I'd go ahead and take a motion for approval.
I motion we approve.
And a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, do I have all in favor? Okay, Okay, we have a abstain. So at that case, we've got 4 in favor, 1 abstain. Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen.
One more.
All right, home stretch, everybody. Item 3, PZ case 2412, to conduct a public hearing and receive public comment on the proposed comprehensive plan for the city of Kennedale and to consider recommendation to approval to the city council. Go ahead, staff. Do we have anybody wanting to talk or speak?
I do not have any requests to speak.
All right, ma'am, we're
Or-
going to open and close that one both at the same time here at 9:24. Or sorry, gosh, I can't even read a clock today. 9:32.
Okay, so here we are. The updated City of Kennedale Comprehensive Plan is complete. The draft, let me say, is complete. After months of steering committee meetings, we've had open houses, we've had community surveys, we've had joint sessions with City Council to get their feedback on this. So now the draft has come before you for further review and vetting. So we've held the public hearing. We want to hear more feedback from folks, particularly planning and zoning. So this updated plan, and we want to do that before it goes to City Council, this updated plan re-envisions the city's focus on future land use, parks, transportation, infrastructure. It has updated goals and objectives that are also included. And so once adopted, the staff, then we'll work with our consultants, Dunaway, who are here to speak briefly tonight and get your feedback. Then we'll work with them to update our development code so that it's consistent with that plan. So earlier you heard me speak, hey, we need to make some changes to zoning. With this new plan, we want to make sure our zoning is positioned well to mesh with that so that we're more consistent. So with that, happy to answer any questions you may have, but I'd like to turn the floor over to Dunaway. Thank you.
Just going to caveat real quick to the rest of the board. I was part of this committee, so I'm going to pretty much stay quiet. And this is going to be y'all's deliberation per se, but go ahead, sir.
All right. So I'm only planning for talking about maybe an hour or 2 hours or so, but good evening, Commission, Mr. Chair. I greatly appreciate it. My name is Stephen Cook. I am a senior planner with Dunaway Associates, and it's been our pleasure for the last year to work with your community and with your steering committee and with you as individuals and your city council to work on a new comprehensive plan for the city. We've given a lot of direction as to where the city wants to go into its future, and the biggest part of this is that this is a plan not written for the city of Kennedale, it's a written plan by the city of Kennedale. And so we just wanted to make sure that we know that we went to a lot of meetings. We made sure we had these meetings were broadcast, these meetings were open and transparent. We had a lot of input from many of our steering committee members. We had a lot of really great input that we were able to draw on maps, and we had a lot of ability to have it. Yes, sir, I will take a break.
No, just real quick, Nathan, can you have the door shut? We got a lot of feedback coming from out there. So I'll make sure everybody in the land can hear.
So with all of this is that we had lots of meetings, and we wanted to make sure that this is the public was engaged in this process, that we heard from the community, because there is a lot of transitional change. You're seeing it tonight in your zoning cases. And so with that, we had a lot of advertising, we had a lot of participation in our open house, we had a lot of in-depth discussion in not only just in the great big scheme of things, but very specific areas. And what did we want to see, and also the specific language that we wanted to see. That specific language helped us formulate a survey, and we had 210 responses to that. We still feel that the people of Kennedale love being here. They want to be a part of this community. It's the reason why you've made your investment to be part of this community, that your neighbors do as well. But there's always opportunities to improve. And so we saw that there are things to improve parks and streets were two of the major things that we saw. And then also that we need to have more restaurants, a grocery store, entertainment, and healthcare services within the community. The biggest thing that we come out of it is a vision. A vision is a hometown with a vision to improve the quality of life for present and future generations. That is our overall goal in this community. This is the way this plan is set up. And so how do we put all of those elements of this plan into that particular vision? So each one of these things has each of our elements, and we'll go through the elements. I am not going to read them all to you. You have them in your plan, and you'll be able to take a look at those and understand what those. But how do they all work together? Is that you have overall goals. We're going to talk about each of those elements. Those goals go into more objectives. What do we want to achieve with each one of those overall goals? How do we meet that goal? And then there are strategies, things that can actually be done to implement all of our objectives and goals, and those are action items. In the back of your plan, there is a table of those goals, objectives, and strategies, and there is a set group of organizations. You as well are as a commission are part of those groups, but it is also partnering with other organizations as well. TxDOT, the city of Arlington, because they're so innately tied to the city of Kennedale and how the city can continue to improve. So those individual strategies are the things that we're going to look at in how you move along in creating an increased better place for the city. So we're going to talk just real quick about the major elements of this plan. Overall, we're looking at growth management. How do we manage growth through location, quality, quantity, and timing? So all of those things, your tools, your zoning ordinance, your UDC, and we're going to be looking at how we can improve that UDC to meet these goals of this plan and be able to tweak those tools, because each one of those tools, how do we write plan developments into the future? How do we work with the urban villages? How do we work with making sure that if multifamily is proposed or if the townhomes are proposed, that they are designed appropriately and located appropriately so that they continue to function better into the future? How do we have single family and our and commercial opportunities so that we do not repeat mistakes in the past and we continue to improve as a community? So all of these objectives are looking towards managing the land uses and continuing to foster those relationships that we had talked about. So that then leads into what we want to see in future land use. How do we have a community that is available for all, that is equitable to all, and that it allows people to work, live, worship, and play? And so all of those big elements kind of fit together into when we start thinking about, is this a place that is going to provide more places for us to play? Is it a place that we're going to be able to find more employment? Is this a place that is going to allow us to go and have the lifestyles that we want to see and spend our money in Kennedale rather than having to go to other communities to do so? And so that we have objectives that are placed into achieving that overall goal. As part of the land use, we wanted to make sure we understood what those definitions are. When we talk about our map that is in there, that was referenced in the earlier case, that what do those look like? And so we have a visual guide to what those look like and what our intent is. A lot of that is looking at areas of making sure that there is still residential low density within the community and its ETJ, so that there is ability to have some larger lots with some estate style homes, with the understanding that there is still, like other cases this evening, some ability to have medium density homes that are going to be a range from higher end, but also going to be a range to affordable. And then again, looking at other densities of housing, because not everybody can afford a single family home. So we do have, as we look through our demographics of the community, we want to make sure that there is always going to be ability for people to live in Kennedale, to continue to contribute to the city. And so we look for a wide range of homes. Again, we're not going to just go and put out willy-nilly, this is where townhomes need to be, or this is where multifamily needs to be. We're going to look at how those are designed, and that's how you step from a plan to implementing the plan through working through those individual tools. We've looked at areas of improvement for your commercial areas and looking at areas where there is an opportunity for future transit-oriented development. That is an area that you might have the ability for a train station to come through the community, have a stop, and you want to have development surrounding that so that people may be able to walk from their place of residence to get onto the train and be able to go to their jobs in other areas of the community. So all of these elements kind of fit together into the community. And you go into, we have a vignette here to kind of look at some of the major changes of that. One of the parts is you have a large industrial development on the interstate, I-20. It's kind of an entry point to the city. A lot of effort has been made over the last 20, 30 years for Business 287 to become a better gateway to the community. It had noxious uses at that location. And now we have retail investment. We have restaurants and at that location. So there's other opportunities along that particular area. At some point into the future, that particular industrial use is going to have the ability, is not going to be able to grow. It's bounded by floodplain. And so what that future might be is they would sell and go somewhere else as their company is being built. But with all the improvements of I-20, that is going to create an opportunity for that site to become a lot more viable as a commercial development. And so perhaps it can be reclaimed as more of a retail environment. So that's kind of some of the feedback that we had. We look over the overall map. There's areas that we want to make sure that we bring back from a history of auto-related and industrial development. We have a lot of floodplain through the city of Kennedale. We want to make sure that that floodplain is preserved and it is not being used for additional development, not only for the clarity of our runoff and to make sure that we don't have additional flooding in our developable areas, but also it's a amenity to the community. We want to see, and we look through our park system and we look through trail system, how do we bring back our ability to utilize those areas and connect trails in other parts of the city and be able to utilize these areas as transportation as well as recreation. So one of these things is that we want to tie all of these different layers together. And so that's what our future land use map is. And I want to assure you that a future land use map is a goal. It is something that a guide to decisions as you're looking at future requests for zoning to come in. This is not your zoning map. Your zoning map is a separate ordinance, and so each individual decision is yours to make. It can, as something comes into the future to you, might not be what this plan says, but it might be absolutely innovative, and it might be something that you really need and want to have in the city. So this is an organic document. This is something as you approve and you want to guide yourself in making those decisions. It is not something that is set completely in stone because you want to be able to have innovation that has not been thought of in coming into the community. We go into transportation. How does our transportation systems work? We have a hierarchy of levels of road network throughout the community. We show on your transportation master plan in the plan to where connectivity needs to be made for future growth to be made on based on these kind of systems. We also do have some specific objectives in making sure that we improve our sidewalk systems and construct new sidewalks for pedestrian access and citizen health. And then again, we make sure that, as I said before, that we evaluate floodplains for the construction of multi-purpose trails. One of the things also that I particularly like is the concept of context-sensitive design. As you go through one section of your community, the road needs to be able to change, to be able to have, how is it changed? It might be wider sidewalks at one point, but as it changes through the community, it might need to be a little bit less involved, and you might have more streetscape. The idea here is to not reduce capacity, but to see that it is sensitive to the kinds of development that are along it. Economic development, there are some catalyst areas that we've described in the comprehensive plan. One is obviously the town center area surrounding where we are today and how we might connect with the elementary school adjacent and how we might connect with, obviously with the library and with Old Town as we go through the original kind of town site of the community, but also looking at our entry points into the community and looking at areas that, how do we approach the city? There might be some additional area for an entertainment district. I think one of the things we heard was we want to be able to provide areas for family-oriented entertainment and restaurants and those kinds of things. So we have identified those within the plan as specific areas that are popped out as separate maps and talk about how the kind of policies that we go through to improve those. Housing, one of the things that we really wanted to make sure is that there is an ability to have those estate-style lots that I think that a lot of the residents in the community are seeking for the development, but also, again, that balance of finding places that are appropriate, that are designed well, that are going to have a slightly higher density as they are built, that are going to be cognizant of your transportation network, that are going to be cognizant of your floodplains, to be appropriately designed to provide a wider variety of housing for everybody. One of the other things is that we wanted to make sure that there is also a greater opportunity for senior housing and age-restricted housing. One of the things, nobody retires to Florida or retires to Arizona anymore. The intent here is to be able to find housing that is, as people retire, they want to reduce their responsibility of their household, but we want to be able to remain within the community that they have contributed to, their place of worship, to their civic duties that they have contributed to. And being able to have housing that they can move to within the community itself is important. And so that is also one of our guiding objectives. The city has had a very robust parks and open space master plan since 2016. We've kind of included several of the elements of that, and there's some successes that have been made over the last several years. We believe that there's opportunities for continued improvement in parks and open space and where the city needs to be able to provide its investment in that, and looking at places where you have that range of different types of parks, ones that for an overall park that is available for the entirety of the city, then starting a granular to a smaller park as you reach into individual neighborhoods. The biggest things that we have heard is indoor recreation center and additional ability to have more sports and organized sports fields as well. This is the last one, I promise. So the last one is utilities, infrastructure, and city services. So again, the city does rely on its relationship with the city of Arlington to provide water services and being able to understand that relationship even better as the city continues to grow, especially on the west side of the community, to be able to find ways of funding infrastructure, to be able to assist the city of Arlington in funding infrastructure to provide additional areas for future development. That's also an economic development goal, is being able to make those connections. You can find those investments and being able to provide areas in directing your growth into those areas. We also want to make sure that we continue to provide solid waste and recycling disposable services, and to provide police service and programs to create a safe environment for all citizens in Kennedale. And one of the last things also is that we want to make sure that there is adopting a FEMA-approved local hazards mitigation plan. That would make the city eligible for funding for additional emergency management funding and other regional, state, and federal grants. I want to tell you that, again, it has been an absolute pleasure being able to work with the city of Kennedale, and we're very proud of this plan. I have a team of planners that help and make sure that this plan is organized. I do not write these plans. I help and manage and organize these plans. My planner, Aiden Herrera, my planner, Ellen Sauer, my planner, Chance LeBlanc is here as well, and they have contributed considerably in making sure that this plan is reflective of and calibrated specifically to the city of Kennedale, and we're greatly pleasure to present it to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. It was actually, we want to reciprocate the pleasure of working with you as well. It was pretty eye-opening. It was pretty interesting to see a forecast of the city and where the citizens want it to go. And I'm just going to let the board know, in case, I mean, I don't know how much you guys were aware of how this committee worked, but it was put together through a lot of, shall I say, a diversity of citizens. And they facilitated walking through one thing. And then we started with a vision, statements, and worked our way on through what we wanted to see in the future, as you saw the different things, all the way from types of housing to entertainment sales. And then all the way at the back here, if you saw, one of the things we looked at was the wastewater infrastructure. So it touched everything that we dealt with tonight and beyond. And that's all I'm really going to say, because I was part of this and the long version of the reading of this. So again, thank you very much. And the floor is y'all's.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to reiterate, thank you again for working with our community. We had a really old comprehensive plan, and to bring that up to date with as much citizen input as y'all did receive, and incorporating all of those different points of view and concerns. And I think the plan is great the way that it's all come together. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
I don't have any questions. Again, I also, I think it's great. For example, the senior living, I didn't even think about that, but that's something that's great, because we do have an aging population that I would assume would want to stay within us. the FEMA point that you mentioned, that could gain additional funding to the city, that was a great point. I don't have any rebuttals. I did enjoy everything that you guys mentioned, and as you mentioned earlier, it does touch point of everything that we've discussed today. So hopefully that mitigates some of those issues in the future. But I think it's a great plan.
Well, thank you very much. You know, and the thing is the plan is only good by the boards and commissions that read it and utilize it. And I think you have a fantastic staff with the city of Kennedale right now that is willing to move to the next step and looking at where the tools are, because your tools are not just your zoning. Your tools are also your CIP budget. Your tools are also your actual budget for the annual year. How many roads are we gonna fix this year? How many sidewalks are we going to improve? Those are the kinds of things that help you make those decisions as you're moving forward. And so those are your real tools that make change in the community. And we hope that this plan provides that guide.
All righty, well, I'll go ahead and at this point call for a motion to vote and approve PZ case 24-12 for the public hearing, and send this one on over to the city council for further action. Do I have a motion?
Second.
First, you got a motion?
Oh, I motion to recommend.
Okay, do I have a second?
This is late in the night.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? It is unanimous, man. And with that being said, we are not going to reconvene to any further sessions tonight. So we're going to let everybody go. It is 4 minutes till 10.
I motion we adjourn.
So did you see this? All right, well, I second the motion. A motion to second.
I second the motion.
All right, all in favor to adjourn at this point? You got to raise your hand. Okay, we're all we're out of here. Thank you all for coming, and appreciate your assistance and time and patience with this one. Thank you.